There it is! Oh, okay. No. Ah!
At CoCoTALK, we'd like to thank our Patreon sponsors. A warm thanks go out to Al Hartman, Alan Huffman, Alan Murphy, Blair Ledoux, Brendan Donaghy, Brian Joyce, Brian Weasler, Christina Armstrong, D. Bruce Moore, Davey Mitchell, Diego, Disney Saints fan, Eric Canales, Fedor Stamen, Glenn Hewlett, Graham Webkey, Grant Leedy, Jason Bucata, Jason Downs, Jenna Farron, Ken Reichert, Kyle Etter, Malfunk, Michael Pitsley, Paul Fiscarelli, Paul Shoemaker, Richard Lorbieski, Rob Inman, Stephen Wagner, Steve Bjork, Terry Steen, Terry Steggy, The Backyard Shed Gang, Tom C., Tom S., and Tim Lindner. Thank you ever so much, patrons. CoCoTALK is an unscripted live broadcast. Anything can and will happen. The views and opinions expressed by members of the panel and the live audience are their own and not necessarily those of the CoCoTALK show, its sponsors, affiliates, or subsidiaries. Open minds encouraged. Sense of humor recommended. If any off-color comments were made, we're sorry.
Hi, this is Dale Lear, designer of TRS-80 Color Baseball, and you're listening to CoCoTALK.
This is CoCoTALK, the world's leading live talk show featuring the Tandy Color computer. It's time to drop your socks, grab your real-time clocks, and let's rock.
CoCoTALK is rocking the 8-bit world, keeping the Tandy flame alive. We may be mocked, but we'll never stop, cause CoCoTALK is rocking the 8-bit world. CoCoTALK is rocking the 8-bit world, keeping the Tandy flame alive. We may be mocked, but we'll never stop, cause CoCoTALK is rocking the 8-bit
Okay, here we are.
If somebody in that chat can just let us know if they can hear us okay, unless Mark Overhoser wants to do a quick check of the audio.
He's muted.
And has ice cream hanging off his lip.
Yeah, I can hear it.
Okay.
Tim says he can hear us okay. So welcome everyone to part 2 of episode 170, because 4 hours wasn't enough earlier today. So basically we're going to be doing some news catch up because we didn't have a chance to do the news last week, and we had quite a bit last week, and now we have even more backlogged, and we don't want to wait another week and then have a show that's 5 hours long of nothing but news. So today we've got a limited panel at the moment. We had a couple of people that went into food comas apparently after the marathon interview earlier. If you guys haven't caught that yet, the interview with Glenn Dionne went quite well. I had a lot of interesting stories from him that we all got to hear, and some rumors finally dispelled and solidified after decades. So it's quite interesting. So anyway, joining us on the panel today, we've got Mark Overhoser.
Howdy there. Glad to be here.
We've also got our host streamer, Mark Bosley.
Hi. Hope I can find the right button to push.
We got some wackadingy Australian boomerangy guy named Nick Marentes.
Crikey. G'day, everyone.
And we got Chet Simpson, who's just sitting around digging holes. And I'm Curtis Boyle, of course. So, do we want to do the news intro, or do we want to just go straight into the news?
Oh, we'll go into the intro.
Do the intro.
Try to make it at least sort of professional.
From around the world, what you need to know. Get caught up on news. News with L. Curtis Boyle.
And now a Muppet News Flash.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on the stream.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen now. You got screen sharing enabled there, Mark?
Yes, I believe I do. Yes, you should be able to share.
Okie dokie. Hey, can everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay, so first up, and I was hoping Ron was actually going to be on the earlier show when we were planning on doing news then, but he actually got torn away and wasn't able to make the show at all. But he dug out some old pictures he did of the old A-Bus, which was a product that was actually cross-platform. It was a kind of an expansion board, kind of like a multi-pack, and they sold a ton of hardware I/O cards for it, timers and clocks and voltage measuring things. And I'm not a hardware guy, so I have no idea what I'm talking about, but a whole bunch of hardware basically. But he pulled out some old pictures of it from some old club meetings that he'd been there. So that's the actual bus plane there. In this particular case, it's a 5-slot model. And you'd plug that into the CoCo, and then you'd have access to all these cards. And this actually came out, if I remember correctly, even before the multi-pack from Tandy came out. And unlike the multi-pack from Tandy, which was meant to run game cartridges, they actually wired it up in some ways to make it easier to launch a game cartridge rather than actually do better hardware support. This was actually designed for hardware. And there's a whole bunch of cards. Like I said, there used to be full-page ads of all the cards available. These were also available on the Apple IIs and some other machines at the time as well. So he had some old pictures here from one of their old club meetings here. You can see some notes here about using the real-time clock, using the A to D converter. There's D to A converters and all kinds of things, interrupt controllers, etc. So if you're a hardware tinker, this was an awesome thing to have back in the day. Now they're fairly rare from what I've seen. This is only the second time I've actually seen one since Rainbow Fest days. But they were quite popular with the hardware tinkerers. So that was really cool. And thanks Ron for putting those pictures up because I haven't seen one of those in decades. Next up, and this is actually a little bit of old news at this point, but if you remember the CoCo Collector show on YouTube, which Boisy Pete does, he's been going through a couple of vintage CoCo systems with some unique features on them. And this one was in particular was a CoCo 3 that Marty Goodman used to own. And of course, Marty being a hardware hacker himself, put all kinds of like custom mods and everything else on it. He kind of showed it on the episode. And then Boisy, who's actually starting to downsize his collection, decided to put it on eBay, and he actually ended up selling it, I think, about a week and a half ago, and it went for $177.50 US, or for Australians like Nick, $250.
Ouch.
So I'm glad the CoCo actually got out to a good home. We another story will be coming up here is Ed Snyder went rummaging through all of his stuff, and he's got like 60 CoCos kicking around. So now if people are wondering why you can't find them on eBay, it's because Ed's got them all. And we'd like to encourage, obviously he's a hardware designer. He does need some spares in case something blows up, but it would be nice to get some of these out because a lot of people have been trying to get, especially CoCo 3s, and the eBay prices are starting to get just insane for those that actually want the hardware and don't want to deal with just the emulators. Which I think something that's, you went through, Chet, didn't you? You took you a while to find a working CoCo 3 to order, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, when I started looking, it actually took a while, but once the first one popped up, there was like 5 of them. I just snatched them up, and because there was the first one that I got, the first one that I actually purchased was it was a 128K CoCo 3. It looked a little bit yellow, but the power cord had been cut, so I ended up getting that one for $100.
Okay, for 120K with the power cord cut, so repairs required.
Yeah, so and I had a CoCo 2, so I just pulled the power supply out, stuck into that, and like voila, it works. And so I had that, and I've got a couple. Then I got 2 512Ks and another 128K. Some of that's for testing, and some of that's for a giveaway. So
have you got any upgraded to the 2 meg yet, or?
No, I'm going to be doing that here pretty soon. That'll be part of my next project.
Oh, okay, cool. Keep us posted on that. I'm excited about that.
Oh yeah, that's going to be a fun one. You're going to love
it. That almost sounds like a threat coming from you, but
you're going to love it. You're going to love it like David loves a grease weasel.
Oh, now I'm really scared.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nimble in the chat says the lowest he's seen a CoCo 3 around these days is $170 to $200.
That's about right, yeah.
Oops.
Greedy bastards.
More than what they sold for new.
Yeah, getting there. Next up, Brian Schubring. Now, we kind of showed this briefly on last week's show, I believe it was, that he'd found this when we went through acquisitions, and he actually went and took some scans of it so you can see it better. And there's this microprocessor technology course, and there was a CoCo 2 version later on. There was a CoCo 3 version, and he's actually got some pieces of both in here. And this is a kit I'd never even heard of, never mind seen before. So I'll zoom it up here. But here's like the cover of the CoCo 3 version. It was basically you get this special customized board that comes with it. You also get some software and cassette. On the CoCo 3 version, you actually got a disk drive with it with some disk stuff too. Even included the color TV and a slimline disk drive in this case for the CoCo 3 version. And here's the earlier CoCo 2 version, but with the disk drive added. It's electronics training course from McGraw-Hill, which I believe is still around actually. Here's the ColorBug monitor, which I don't know if anybody here has ever seen actually run. I'm not sure what its monitor is like compared to some of the other ones I've seen in the past. And then they had a basic from visible registers, which is kind of to teach you some of the 6809 stuff, as well as the hardware. So it kind of taught you the CPU as well. And there's the entire package of what you got in the CoCo 2 days. All the manuals, the CoCo itself, the TV, the hardware add-on board that monitors stuff, the cassette software, the disk drive. They even threw in a joystick, which I'm not sure why they did that for a hardware course, except maybe to teach you how potentiometers worked or something. And there's the parts you put together to make your kit. Nerds. This is just a picture of people actually using the kit. So, and this was actually available for multiple other computers too. It wasn't just the CoCo. They had training courses on other machines as well. So there's some literature for it as well. Anyway, it looks like a really interesting thing. I don't remember ever seeing this. I don't know if anyone on the panel ever saw these or if these ever got outside of the United States. Nick, did you ever see them down in Australia? I know I didn't see them in Canada.
Nah, never saw it.
And Mark Boisy, have you ever seen that? You're kind of a hardware guy.
No, I hadn't seen that.
So hopefully Brian will find some of the software and maybe post in the archives so we can kind of get caught up. And maybe some of the manuals, if you can scan those too, and kind of see what the whole thing was about, because it'd be an interesting piece of history. Obviously, there was some sort of a deal between McGraw-Hill and Radio Shack. Next up is a video from somebody I'd not seen before. The YouTube channel is called Newsmakers Tech, and it's a Tandy Lab episode. And I won't play the whole video here, but basically what he does is he unboxes the entire color computer family. Well, he kind of doesn't unbox CoCo 3 because it doesn't have a box. But he received a CoCo 1, he received a CoCo 2, a CoCo 3, and an MC10. And he actually goes through and unboxes, and then kind of not knowing what the computer is, he will kind of go through and the box, the contents, and most of the time accurately, tell you what's in it. Sometimes he's kind of guessing.
It's like a CoCo 1.
Yeah. He goes in the order CoCo 1, 2, 3, then MC10 is kind of a bonus round at the end. And of course, YouTube's going to act up because it's YouTube. Anyway, it's a pretty lengthy video. It's 14 minutes. He's planning on doing some follow-ups with it later, actually running stuff on it, which I haven't seen any of that yet. So I'll keep an eye on his channel. But it was pretty cool. We're getting a lot of new blood, I guess, new CoCo blood. People have not been in the CoCo hobby before. In fact, you'll see some stories there a little later with some quite young people. Actually, the demographics actually going down, which is good because we can't just have us old farts, doing this all the time. We need some young blood to fire us up and keep us honest, type of thing. So. Next up after that, Sheldon MacDonald. I'll go easy thing. Is working on a new RSDOS disk imaging tool for Windows, and he was wondering about some new ways to make it even more useful than it is now. And it's got some features we've kind of seen. I think it was Paul Fiscarelli's got something similar to this going on, but he's actually also doing it for OS 9, if I remember. I think, Nick, you've been playing with that one, or was it somebody else's you're playing with that? I can't remember.
I played with an early version of that, but I think I entered a message here suggesting if he can do dual pane or display, have two DSKs open at once, which he's done apparently. If you scroll down, he's got a picture of it updated. Yeah, click on the second picture. Oh, wherever it is.
Well, that's the actual download, I think, isn't it?
There should be a second picture there.
Well, this is Louis Fernandez's CoCo Disk Util, because like I said, there's been a few of these projects.
Yeah, no, but no, there was a second picture. It was the other day.
I'll see if I can find it here. Keep talking, Nick. Down for a while.
I'm mad.
So
I'm
you
mad.
requested.
There
oh,
it
here
is. There it is. Oh, is that it? No, it's not. It almost is. It's got a window popped up in front of it.
Okay, so that is the dual pane you were talking about, though.
It is, but there was a newer. There was another picture, but anyway.
So basically, that's showing two disk images side by side, I presume.
Yeah, yeah.
And you can copy files, drag them back and forth.
Yeah, drag from one window to the other.
See, what we need is something like this that it can also do RSDOS and OS9 disks, so you can actually copy files between them in case you need to, say duplicate sound files or something like that.
Yeah.
And I know Paul was doing one that actually had like raw, reads, and it would actually do ASCII and detokenize BASIC and
it was. His did a lot of things.
This one too, if I remember correctly, Sheldon said this one is for Windows only. It's not cross-platform with OS 10 or Linux, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, it's good that a lot of people are writing these utilities because, I mean, we're all switching to disk images, even on the CoCo SDC. So this just makes it a lot easier for people to transfer their files around between their systems. And the more user-friendly versions of these, I think the better it'll help the beginners and the new people that are coming into.
I found the picture. If you scroll down a little bit more, it's a little bit
lower.
lower.
It's a bit lower, is it? There it is. That's the one I'm thinking of. See, I'm not mad.
Well, yeah, you still are, but
shut up.
Yeah.
Slightly less mad.
Yeah, that's a more updated picture.
Okay, yeah, I can see in the middle there move and copy between the two.
Yeah,
panes.
that's it.
Now, is he supporting like ADOS formats and stuff for the longer?
I don't know. Yeah.
Because one thing I wanted to try, like the Amigos had their charity thing, and one of the competitions they had on the Amiga side was making mod files. And I wanted to try to, set it up a disk image for Aaron to try to play some of those on SOC's mod player for the CoCo 3, because I thought it'd be pretty cool. And also a bit of support for their thing. But every single mod they had was at least 200K long, some were 600K. And I know SOC mentioned in the documentation for the mod player that it will handle larger disks, but your DOS has to basically natively host that. He doesn't directly do anything patching wise to modify the disk basic to do that. And I don't know, do we have a standard that works good on the SDC, or does ADOS work with the SDC properly? I've never tried.
Oh, I've never tried. The DMK format, does that allow any larger disks?
Yeah, it does. Well, it'd be SDF if it was on the SDC, but yeah, it does.
Yeah. And maybe you can use that. I don't know.
Yeah, because I do want to try that, because they had some pretty good entries on there. They had some of the actual Amiga people on there in their group actually, compose songs. We could even play them without getting, copyright ticks. So, Stevie can make his tens of cents. No, it's cool seeing a lot of these utilities here to make things easier for the users.
Yeah, that one's a good one. I'm looking forward to that one.
Okay, next up, Garrett Meiers posted some photos from a major CoCo haul he found in North Carolina, which includes some slightly rarer stuff here too. So I'll just quickly go through some of the pictures here. And this was a rather large collection he got in possession of. So it's CoCo 1s, multi-packs, a whole bunch of floppy drives, right back to the original 35 track.
Oh, where's David's lad?
Yeah.
Down to the 40 track, a half height at the bottom there. Yeah, it's David Ladd's wet dream is what it is. Then there's one here that has the Mark Data Products keyboard, which in my view is probably the best feeling keyboard we had at the time, with a very close second being the HGL 57. I personally would have picked the HGL 57 because I liked having the extra keys. And I had people up here at the local club at each of these, and I got to try them both. But this was a very nice keyboard.
I've got that keyboard.
Yeah, it was a nice one. Some more mini discs. A cassette player with Phantom Slayer in it, the exact same cassette I have here.
What's that thing in the front there? I see the two disk drives. But what's in the front?
I don't know.
I can't really tell. Maybe there's a better picture afterwards.
Some kind of console.
Also picked up some Model 1 and 3 stuff here, which is what these games are from. The original Dancing Demon that Dancing Devil was based on. I remember seeing these both in the Radio Shack catalogs back in the day. Here's a bunch of discs and cartridges, including Shanghai and Thexter, little Radio Shack color computer catalog, text edit. Kind kind of the standard Radio Shack binders, which a lot of programs had in the day. This one, Picker one's a color computer and learning lab, which we've covered before, with all the cassettes actually there too in the manual. Shanghai, Racket 2, card games, which we were talking about earlier. I think that's that poker game, the solo poker game that Paul Shoemaker's working on. I think the CoCo 1 and 2 version he was mentioning is actually on this collection, if I remember correctly. An Orc 90. Where it tells you to remove the cardboard cover before plugging it in, which should be bleeding obvious, but a couple of different disc controllers of various vintages. Smaller multi-pack. And we're back to the beginning. Anyways, a pretty good haul. He didn't list what the price was. I'd be curious for all that. Now, this one here is a little bit of an interesting one, and I don't have the actual video to play because I think Netflix would flip on us if we tried playing some of their stuff on a live stream. But if you guys are following the Netflix show called History 101, which is a series, they've put the first season out, and it's just, randomly picked subjects. They've done stuff on plastics and robots and all kinds of things. This particular one is episode 4, and it's on plastics. And very briefly, and I took a screenshot here, at around the 10:35 mark, they start talking about going into how plastics evolved in the 1980s in consumer products. And they were covering a lot of the home computers and video console games. Instead of having the old wood grain like the old Ataris did, they went to much more plastic cases. And this just happens to be the transition video they used is the Color Space Invaders by Spectral Associates on the CoCo, which is what the screenshot's from. It only appears for like a second and a half, but when I was watching, I was like, wait a sec, I recognize that. So we're on a new Netflix show, briefly. Now this one, Nick, you and I kind of talked about this one. This is a joystick designed for the Dragon. Let me zoom that up here a little bit, which is a brand I'm assuming must be from the UK because I've never heard of it before. An Alt A1. But it's kind of a pistol grip style, but it's a much flatter, narrow one than the Radio Shack Tandy one that they sold. And it's got a switch, I'm assuming for rapid fire or something, or switching between which button's active.
Which buttons, I think, yeah. On the Dragon anyway, because the Dragon doesn't support a second button.
Yeah. But I thought it was pretty interesting because they did have, like, even their free-floating ones were quite different looking than the Tandy ones. They had a much longer body, like a hand grip part, and then you had the free float on the top, their equivalent of the Black Beauty. But it was interesting to see one of these because it's a common base design that we had here in North America, the pistol grip style one, but the actual design is quite a bit different than most of the ones I saw from back in the day. Like most of ours had the little, finger held grip parts, like the Tandy 1000/CoCo one did from Tandy. And this one actually has pretty well just flat, which is different. And it's much shorter than I'm used to seeing. It does have the suction cups on the bottom, though. I'd be interested to hear from some of the Dragon people, if this is a really good joystick or not. Next up, Greg Dionne in Facebook had originally posted the link for this. And I'd missed this. Apparently, he put this up a while ago, but he reposted it because I guess a lot of people missed it. But on his GitHub account, he actually has an MC10 assembly language program tutorial, which includes sample code that you can enter in and also instructions for setting up one of the emulators. He has a PowerPoint presentation, and he goes through the entire assembly language set, and he goes into how to do graphics and sound and read the keyboard and everything else. So anybody interested in doing MC10 programming and wants a nice head start tutorial on how to learn how to do 6803 assembly language and even how to use their interrupt controller and stuff like that, this is a pretty good one. And I took a couple of screenshots, which I don't know if I still have in here or not, but I think I do. Yeah, so that's like, for example, the first slide introducing it and also mentioning the virtual MC10 and the TASM compiler. And then here's one of the sample slides from a bit later on. We're showing you how to use some of the higher res graphics that the MC10 could actually handle. Now they didn't hook up they didn't have a SAM, so they don't have all the modes we had. And they also wired the RAM kind of stupid so that even if you put in the 16K upgrade, you couldn't use it for video RAM. You're still stuck with 4K. So you couldn't even use the highest modes without it, looping back and replaying some of the same stuff without hardware modifications. But he actually has some, sample machine language code here on this particular screen. This is about halfway through the tutorial, or maybe 2/3 of the way through. So it does get pretty advanced, and it definitely, if anybody's interested in writing an arcade game for the MC10, this would be a good tutorial to go through if you're not already familiar with the machine. Okay, let me just close some of these windows off so I can get my reaction time on my machine a little bit better. Okay, so this is vlog number 8 on the Roland's Recycling YouTube channel. This is another younger guy who's picked up a CoCo. He was born in 1992, so I feel really old. And basically, he's working on firing up a CoCo 2 that he acquired for the first time, and he's got his electronics desk here set up, so he's kind of like going through the electronics and making sure everything works. And
he likes bricks.
Actually, he uses it for the soldering iron. Actually,
he uses it for everything. By the looks of it.
Anyway, it's a pretty lengthy video, and he kind of goes into a fair bit of detail, and he has a pretty interesting testing scheme set up. Let's see if we can find that. He's got an interesting amperage testing system that actually involves a heat lamp. Unfortunately, YouTube's being a bear's ass there.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to.
This is also not going to work for stuff that's like, that's going to draw 800 watts or whatever. You don't go plugging that into this. And honestly, it's probably just going to fry.
Anyway, he starts fiddling around. And he's trying to get a good video signal out, and he made a
Let's go ahead
cable
and
for
pull
it. And
this
the original
out.
cable's kind of snaky, and then he finally figured it was the cable the problem, not the RF box or the CoCo itself. Like, here's the original signal he was getting.
Let's shut the CoCo off here.
But once he finally figures out the cable was snaky, because you hand
turn
wired
on.
and hand soldered the cable really quickly before starting, and then
Oh my goodness! Would you look at that?
not up to this point.
Well, that looks a hell of a lot better, doesn't it? So there's something with this this other adapter or the cable I was using or something. So
Anyway, it's a fun bit. He kind of explains his background while he's doing things, and he kind of explains what his purpose in doing it is, and some of his test equipment, how he's got it set up. Hopefully he does some more further stuff on it too here. He's only got color basics, so maybe he'll upgrade it later or something too. Next up, this one I found fascinating. I was actually hoping Stevie would be on here to kind of discuss this one briefly. This is another person that's new to a CoCo, but he's very young. Like, he's probably even pre-teen or right around the teenager era. And he's actually got a series on YouTube that he basically goes and rummages through garage sales and stuff, trying to find old electronics. He's been collecting CRT TVs and other old 8-bit video games and stuff. And actually, one of the things he ends up picking up here is a CoCo 2 in this case. So he explains how he found this one. He went with his mom shopping, kind of got dragged along, and there was a Vortex video game store near where she went shopping. So he found the CoCo 2 there, which was on sale for $10 as is. And the power cable, just like Chet had mentioned on his CoCo 3, the power cable was cut off. Was this some common thing that electronics people did? I don't understand. While these machines are showing up with power cables cut off. He basically said, and this is a young kid, so he doesn't have a ton of money. So the guy said, $10. And he said, I don't know if my mom will let me get it for that. So he went back and see his mom and stuff. And then he came back to the store later, and the guy went, you know what? We're probably never going to even try to fix this and put a new power cable. Have it for free. And just gave it to him. And then he ended up buying a couple Nintendo Power magazines or something at the same time because he felt kind of guilty. But he basically got it for free, and he hasn't got it quite fixed yet, but I'll just play a little clip here as he's going over his CoCo.
What the heck? Okay, they don't allow cameras there, even though I saw a YouTuber in that same exact
Oh, YouTube bugger up.
store. Whatever. So, this TV I got earlier.
Can you guys hear it
in the
okay? Is the volume
episode,
okay?
Yeah.
As nice as it is actually pretty perfect for pairing up with this Tandy color computer. I mean, it's not perfect, obviously. You're not going to be able to put it on this. Then you probably have to get some sort of monitor and then a bunch of adapters and whatever. But since I got this thing, and this other CRT is just for emergencies if mine ever dies or, whatever. I don't know. I'll find a use for it sometime. But this colored computer will be very nice to fit with this, considering it's about the same size and it has an RF, unlike the other one, big part. And yeah. And since the only thing wrong with this is the power cord, and all you gotta do is just put it on. You get the video cable. I don't need any controllers, although I will get some cartridges and a joystick maybe in the future. I might just use this to do Tandy's version of BASIC. who knows? I don't really care about these games, to be honest, but if I ever find a good deal, yeah. But yeah. So today's episode of Thrift Store Stuff was extremely successful. I got a free Tandy Color Computer 2, even if it's broken. Obviously free TV at the end of the street, which I'm probably going to use.
Yeah, it was funny with the TV. He was actually at a garage sale down the street, and he was pulling a little wagon. The guy just, said free pickup, just take the TV. So he got all this for free. But I find it fascinating that somebody that young would actually have any interest in a CoCo whatsoever. So, they might be looking at the next Chet Simpson here for like Digger 14 or something. I don't know. They already have the cutoff power cord in common. So, sorry, what was that?
It's going to grow his hair a bit.
The only thing I can think of is a reason to cut the power cord off is if there was some sort of a safety issue, either with the cord or otherwise the machine too dangerous to plug in.
I think a lot of places do that so that they're not selling something that could potentially be dangerous. They cut the cord, you can't turn it on. So they say, well, it's not dangerous. Yeah, liability.
Liability becomes the person that has to take it apart and put the cord back in.
Yeah.
Does that sound logical, Chet? I mean, yours was cut off too. Do you think it was the same thing, or?
I think I don't know, but I'm gonna ask Google. Let's see, how do we do this?
Could be somebody just wanted the power cord and they couldn't see if keeping the rest of it.
The worst thing is, because he's a kids channel on a kids friendly type thing set up, he's actually got comments disabled, so I can't even give him any help or suggestions. Like for example, his is a full keyboard and it says Tandy Color Computer, not Radio Shack. So he might even have the true lowercase one. I was going to give him a tip about that, but I have no way to contact him, unfortunately. Anyway, I thought it's fascinating just to find somebody that young actually interested in, first of all, in CRTs and the old stuff, not the new stuff. I mean, he plays some new stuff. You can see that in some of his other videos he's done, but he definitely likes some of the retro stuff. He was playing like an old Nintendo in one of the previous episodes, and he's been hunting these CRTs. He's actually picked up a couple of them over the last month and a half. And his parents are okay with him collecting all this old crap, which is kind of cool too. My mom and dad would just maybe take the old stuff back.
So Mickey just says, shove the wires in a socket. Call it good.
Just don't stick it in a grease weasel. That's all I got to say.
Apparently, one reason that it happens is that when stores discard particular merchandise like thrift shops, they will cut the cords on electronic devices so that they aren't usable to reduce dumpster diving.
Oh, okay.
They don't know us.
Yeah, we do it anyway, whatever. Yeah.
And I know here in Vegas, like when they go through and they like if they do stuff at the hotels where they pull the electronics out, what they'll do is if it doesn't work, they'll cut the cord. Just so that it's easy, so that it's really easy to know. So a lot of people could be picking up these machines. Recently they plug it in, they have no idea whether it works or not. Now they just hear it click.
Yeah.
And for electronics to click when you turn it on, that's usually a bad sign. But for us, it's life.
Yeah, the power relay worked. And if you type motor on, you can hear another click, even if you don't have a TV to hook it up to, so you can check it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, this next one here is a pretty cool one. Now, the guy, his real name is Peter. He's from France. His YouTube name is 8-Bits in the Basement. If you remember that, he was actually in the chat. It's the first time he's watched our show. He actually sent me an email after the show.
He's here right now.
Yeah, he's in the chat now.
Oh, is he?
Hi, Peter. Hi, Peter.
Hey, Peter. He's actually got here, and I'll just do a little bit of preamble before I start playing it, but basically he lives in France, so he's actually got the SCART version of the CoCo 2, the official SCART. This isn't some hacked upgrade of a PAL machine. This is an actual SCART machine. Now, he's not super familiar with the CoCo. He just acquired this himself, and he put in one of the emails to me, it's a lot cheaper to get CoCos there than it is some of the other machines that are popular in France. And he can probably give me more details in the chat here than I can. But at any rate, we're going to try to get him on the show actually here, probably, I'm trying to remember what he said in the email, probably around August 8th. So in a couple of weeks, we'll try to get him on and he can actually show us, and anybody has any questions about the SCART board and the way it's laid out. Now, some of you hardware types like the two marks, etc., can maybe go through some of it. But I'll play a little bit here where he's kind of showing the SCART motherboard, and you guys can tell me how different this is from motherboards of the CoCo 2 you've seen in the past. Oops, this is probably going to be a little loud. Let me throw that down a bit.
Go over there, MUA. There we go. Okay, that's that out of the way. Anyway, the chips that are interesting us today are these. They're 2 memory chips.
I should mention he did some upgrades too. Upgraded to extended base and upgraded 64K during this video as well.
16K ones. 16K. 16K. No, they're 2 8K, which give us 16K. So we've got 8K and 8K. And we want to swap those out for 232K. That'll give us 64K. So it's easy enough. We pull out these two. We pop in the 232K. And then there is a solder point here on the board which says 64K. It's right there. Just these 2 points here just need to be bridged. That's all that needs to happen. We'll put a small little piece of wire just running across the little white line there, and we'll tack it in at either side. And that's it.
Now, a quick question here. I know the Model 2Bs had the option for the 244 64K chips in North America. And then they had the little satellite board. You could put the 8-chip satellite board like the old style upgrades. But I do not remember those 2 little white connectors that are right around the RAM chips he's showing there. Is the way the upgrade was done on this. Is that?
That's where you plug the satellite board in.
Yeah. Is that the same layout that the North American ones had, or was it a bit different?
It had the 2 white strips like that. I think they were in a different place on the board, but it seems all backwards. It's like the processor's down the bottom corner, and on the other machines, it's up on the top. So the layout looks totally different on that machine than from a US one.
Okay. And also, if you take a look in the upper right corner by the cartridge slot, you can see he's got the color basic ROM in there instead of the extended. Now, it actually is a 24-pin ROM in a 28-pin socket. Was that the way Tandy sold the non-extended basics too? Was on?
Yeah, I believe there's a jumper on there also.
Yeah, there's just right below right above the CPU.
Mm-hmm.
There's 4 or 5 jumpers there that switch the socket over from a 24-pin to a 28.
Okay, yeah, that's basically the same thing he does here. I just didn't know if the North American ones, because all the CoCo 2s I saw of this vintage all had 64K in them already, so I didn't know if that was how it was done.
Yeah, on the Korean machines, yeah.
Yeah, so there's you can see the empty pins and then those bridges you're talking about underneath.
Right. Because when you had extended basic, you had a bigger ROM.
Okay.
128-bit ROM versus the 64-bit ROM.
And then he also showed, I think, elsewhere in the video, I can't remember exactly at what spot, but he showed that there's no TV selector switch, there's no channel selector at all, because SCART didn't need it. So.
Did that have any RF output at all?
I don't believe so. Peter, if you want to chime in the chat room there, just in case I'm remembering this wrong, because I actually viewed this video several weeks ago, so I don't remember all the details, but I don't believe so.
Well, if we back up a couple of frames, we can see the full board again. No, there's no modulator.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yep. Just the one connector up by the power button. I guess that must be the SCART connector, I'm guessing.
Yeah, must be.
Now the power supply, doesn't this look a lot smaller than the ones we had in North America? Or am I just remembering this wrong? I haven't opened one up in a while.
It looks a little more complicated. Like the stuff in the lower left-hand corner must be to do with the video out, because that's not on a US one.
Okay, yeah, he just verified in the chat too. No RF at all. So he's taking pieces apart.
Yes, Mickey, 120K bit.
Was the SCART an RGB output?
I believe it is a version of RGB. Once again, Peter hopefully can verify
Maybe all that extra circuitry in the bottom left is actually the RGB circuitry.
Oh, that could be.
Convert S video to RGB.
What's he saying? He says, like an S video connector, yes, RGB with sync. There's a slightly more zoomed in version that might help.
Yeah, I'm thinking that circuitry down at the bottom is combining signals together.
Yeah, because the 6847's down there.
Yeah, that's what his finger's on right now, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know what that thing is next to the video chip in that same corner. Yeah, just to the left.
I don't have a clue unless he zooms up in here. I can find it. I think this is just where he's kind of going through the chips.
The main workload is done between these chips here.
This is after he did the 64K upgrade and the extended basic.
Smoke time.
Lovely, lovely. We're after getting our upgrades done. So now we're going to have a little look and see what's after changing. So the first thing to do is check if our ROM upgrade is after working.
Obviously the ROM upgrade works.
It's just turning on the system. And you see in the top left-hand screen.
It's definitely a later model CoCo 2 to have the 1.3 color basic, because I think the CoCo 2s came out with 1.2 originally. 1.3 I think was the upgrade to handle the 4464 style chips.
See if the ROM upgrade has worked.
The 4x4.
The next thing we can check quite easily.
They upgraded the same too.
All we need to do is we type print mem, and this will print out the memory. So this works great before the upgrade because it'll give us a result of 14,631, which is correct. That's our 16 kilobytes with overheads removed, you know, for basic and screen memory and all that kind of thing. If we run the same command after the upgrade, it'll give us 24,871 because now the ROM is a little bigger, the extended color basic ROM is a little bigger, so the overheads are a little more. But what it's actually given us is it's reporting back a memory size of 32 kilobytes. And the reason for this is that this is a limitation of the basic used on the CoCo computer.
Anyway, it was pretty cool watching that. I had never seen a SCART motherboard, actually the original Tandy one. I've seen, you know, SCART adapters like we have now, but I'd never seen an actual SCART based CoCo motherboard. So like I said, he's planning on being on the show probably around August the 8th. So if you guys have any questions and you want to watch his video there from the link that Mark put in the chat. And then if you have any questions for him, if you want to, you can even send in the questions to me a little bit ahead of time and I can forward them off to him. And he can, you know, try to figure out some of the answers to it if you have, you know, hardware questions on the board, etc. So we can have a bit of an interview with him on that date and kind of go through the SCART. The video looks pretty good. It's nice and clean. I mean, he had a little bit of capture problem on the upper left there, but looks pretty good. And it's, I think, a fairly rare CoCo. I don't know anybody else that has an actual SCART CoCo. I know quite a few people with PAL ones, but sorry.
It'd be nice to know more about it because, yeah, it is kind of rare overall.
Yeah, I'm imagining like that wasn't even a standard. Like the UK used PAL. I can't remember if the rest of Europe, like Germany and stuff, did they use PAL or SCART, or was it a mixture of both?
Everybody used PAL except for France and like Russia. They use something called CCAM.
Okay, so this would be basically a uniquely French machine.
Yes.
Yeah, so it'd be definitely nice, Peter, to have you on to show us the nitty gritty of that board.
And that probably should be a 220 volt machine as well.
Yeah, it is. I think he showed the underside sticker earlier.
And 50 hertz.
Let's find it here. This was his unboxing.
Fairly clean.
Super clean.
Yeah, it's in a good shape, really good shape. Obviously, I haven't tried to solder anything on it. Covered in burnt hair. Yeah, here you can see the channel selector. The plastic's not even punched out. It's actually still in the mold.
Yeah.
And the two TV connectors are a little bit different too, if I remember correctly. Other than that, I think it's pretty close to the ones we're used to. And I don't know if you can see that there, but yeah, it does say 220.
220, 240.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's a 3134A though.
Is that the right part number for?
Sounds right. I have to look it up.
And the serial number, I'm kind of doubting that, you know, Tandy sold 2 million CoCos in France, so I'm guessing that the 2 might be a prefix specifically for
that type model machine.
Yeah.
Or that series, that run.
Does it say where it's made? Can't quite see the fine print.
3134A, and yeah, it's European, 220 volts and 50 hertz and 22 volt amps. So that's that.
It doesn't have a country of origin on it that I can see.
does say Tandy Corporation. So I'm
What
guessing
was the? Oh no, that's all right.
All right.
What is he saying here? Sure did 220 volts. We connect to a TV and select AV. And made in Korea.
Ah, Korean.
That was a cool video. And like I said, I've never seen one of that particular. I've seen PAL. I've seen obviously NTSC. We've seen various versions of them type thing. We've even seen some rare prototypes, from when they were initially making Coco 2s and even the deluxe Coco and stuff, but I've never seen one of these. So that was pretty cool. Never seen a native SCART Coco. So anyway, look forward to that brief interview and kind of going through the board here in a couple of weeks. We'll have the guy that actually owns it and did the video coming on for us. So get your questions ready. Okay, next up. I'm not even sure how to pronounce this. Soren Roug, I'm not sure. But he did a first boot of a new OS 9 Level 2 emulation with a 4K MMU block size. Now, normally the Coco 3 uses an 8K. Some of the old Gimmicks machines did use 2 or 4K. It's based on the Dragon 128 kernel, and the Dragon 128 was actually an MMU-based machine. Without the memory map screen working at this point, the output is going to the serial port. So he doesn't have disk working yet. So he's kind of just getting it working again, but he wants to eventually get this all running in an emulator so he can run some of the old Gimmick software that was based on that MMU size. And I know a few of the hardcore old people in the community here, like David Weens, who actually wrote S-Disk 3, I think it was. One of the drivers from back in the day. The Powerhouse OS 9 users are quite interested in this. So I'll keep an eye on that project. Next, this one showed up on Facebook. Garrett Meiers posted a picture of a different Videotex terminal that I've seen before. I've seen the ones that just say Videotex and it has a little, light in the button. I've seen the blue ones, which are the original AgVision ones. This one actually has the Tandy or Radio Shack, I should say, the Radio Shack logo replaced, and it says Professional Farmers Instant Update. And is this one that anybody else has ever seen this particular model before? Because this was a new one on me. And I wasn't even aware this version existed. And I know some people here in the chat originally thought it was a Coco 1 and didn't notice the fact that it's not Radio Shack and
it has got the light, yeah.
Yeah, the light like the Videotex terminals did.
Wonder if it was just a rebrand from a co-op or something.
Yeah, I guess that's possible. I do know Tandy had made some deal with the Farmers Association, whatever it was called at the time, because that's one place they were really trying to push the Videotex terminal even before the Coco was released. But I don't know if this was an officially co-branded thing where they manufactured and then the Farmers Union or whatever sold it separately on their own. I'd be interested in the history of that. I'll have to maybe check with Boisy.
I did a little bit of Googling and I really couldn't find a whole lot about it when I saw that thing because it caught my eye as well.
Okay, I'll check with Boisy because I know we did quite a bit of research in the Videotex terminals back when he was doing the book with Bill Laguidis and
it's in pretty good condition.
Yeah,
not even the paint's not worn off.
Yeah, like where your wrists would hand on the bottom, you rubbed off to black. Okay, next one here is from Bart van den Acker in the Netherlands, and he of course runs the Home Computer Museum. We've featured this a few times before because his first computer he ever personally owned was a Coco. And they've got some new acquisitions here of some Dragon and Coco stuff just added to the museum. And their museum, I think, is actually just open, with COVID going on. It's actually open to the public again. So there we see a Dragon 64, the Dragon disk drives, which was a fair bit rarer to have in the UK than they were in the States. A couple of the standard Dragon disk controllers, which are the free-floating Black Beauty equivalents, but with the big handle you can hold on to. There's a zoom up. I'm not sure what the little painted dots on the keyboard. I don't think that was standard, so somebody must have added those in afterwards. Either they're blood spatters or something. I'm not sure. There's a close up, and of course they're running OS 9, so I like this. And they have this switch here on the several switches actually on the Dragon drives. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what that does. That's not standard that I know of.
Welcome is spelled different.
Looks like one says 4080 on the left side, and then
yeah.
Oh, 4080 track. Yeah, that makes actually the left and right both have that. Then the B switch maybe switches. Were you only allowed to have one drive with Dragon DOS? That sounds kind of odd. So I don't know if that's a switcher between drives or not. And there's the actual Dragon version packaging of the editor assembler debugger from OS 9, Basic 9 itself, C compiler, and the OS 9 system programming manual, which honestly is a lot fancier than the ones that Tandy sold. So it looks a bit more impressive. And then Dragondir extra edity. I'm not even sure what that means, but I'm not even sure what that software does. And then he picked up a CoCo One. This is an actual 4K. You can see the paint rubbing off here.
Yeah, that one.
The black that we were mentioning before. Because it's 4K, I don't believe the F boards were ever sold with 4K. So this has to be an E or earlier. Probably a D, actually. Possibly an E. So this would be the same model that I originally had. I had a D board with 4K. That was my very first one. And then back to the beginning. So, anyway, if anybody ever gets a trip out to the Netherlands and wants to pop in the museum, they actually allow some hands-on with its stuff too. And they've got Cocos and Dragons and Commodores and all kinds of stuff, as we've shown before. Okay, and here's the Ed Snyder, the Cylon, who also apparently is a hoarder. He went through, as he said, to reorganize his retro computer storage room and said he even found stuff he forgot he had. So we'll kind of go through it. Now, here's a general idea of what he's got. And if you're wondering where all the Cocos are that you wish you could buy on eBay, I think we found them.
He's got an MM1 on the floor too.
Yep. And that's really rare.
Damn.
So he's got all these nice MC10s for you guys who want the MC10s.
He must have a lot of windows.
Commodore 16 or paperweight. I'm not sure which that's meant to be. That's the, I believe, the M1. Some Atari stuff.
Commodore.
Apple stuff. Some fancy tape decks.
Model 100 floppy drive. Yeah.
Yeah, the whole floppy drive video interface case.
Yeah.
There's
TIs.
the expansion modules for the TI 9940.
Here's his CoCo One, part of his CoCo One collection. And he's got both the older models and the newer ones. You can tell the ones that have the full black background are the older ones, and then the one with the silver inlay, like a third one from the bottom there.
He likes to have spares.
Yeah, and I can understand. Ed's a hardware developer. He's making new boards for all these machines. He's not just doing CoCo 3 stuff. He's doing, he's helping manufacture the CoCo VJs, for example, and the MC10 upgrades. So I can understand him having some spares, but isn't this a little bit much?
Well, he needs to have every version so we can test the compatibility.
Oh, I guess that's true. I never thought of it. But mind you, the CoCo One only had D, E, and F boards and a very rare C board. I count more than 4 there. Maybe 2 of each in case you blow one up and you have to switch it around. But he's got more on the couch here yet. We haven't got to. So there's a couple more CoCo Ones, including some that even have the CoCo 3 keyboard put into it. Or actually, no, that's one of his CoCo Mech ones because the color's on right for the CoCo 3. And he's got some Dragons, of course, and some Commodore stuff here as well.
Amstrad.
Yep. CPC Amstrad. Microcalculator boxes.
Sinclair.
Yeah, Timex Sinclair. The ZX80, isn't that the original?
Yeah, it's the Z80.
Or the American version of the Sinclair Timex.
Yeah.
And some development Altera boards. And a bunch of multi-packs. I think pretty well every vintage he's got there. He's got the original gray. He's got the fat rounded white one, and he's got the smaller version of the squared off Tandy multi-pack as well. And there, if you want some CoCo 3s and 2s, I mean, once again, all the ones missing on eBay, here they are. Like several dozen of them.
Well, hopefully not. Those are not just the ones customers have sent him to fix.
Well, he said this was his storage area. So I don't think these are customer ones. I think these are just ones that he has and has owned for however long.
Wow.
Some Aquariuses on the bottom. Those are a little bit more rare. Another CoCo hidden away here just because you still need more. That's an Atari, isn't it? On the right?
Yeah, I don't know if that's a Falcon because it's a dark gray.
Yeah, it could be a TT or a Falcon. I can't remember what color those were.
The Falcons were dark gray, but I don't know. Is that a Falcon or is it a spray painted white one? Gray one, normal one.
Yeah, I can't remember. Do you remember what color the TT030 was?
Well, they were the light gray. It was only the Falcon that was the dark gray.
Okay. Like I remember the original STs and the various models of that 1040 set, but I couldn't remember what the TTs were.
That could be spray painted because look at the keyboard. It was really yellow.
Yeah, the floppy drive is yellow too. Maybe they designed it that way.
Yeah, so I reckon they've spray painted, or someone has spray painted the case.
Could be. Could be. There's Dragon Martino on some more floppy drives because, you know, he likes Dave. Some Macs. He's got some Power PC Macs under the table, some 680XO Mac on top of the table there.
Over in the chat, Dave and Sharon saying an MSX on that last screen.
Yeah, there was.
A Sony Hitbit.
This one?
No, one back. The one to the left.
Here on the left?
An MSX. One, or a, Sony MSX Hitbit.
Oh, yeah, Hitbit on the, yeah, I can see that there.
Was that the one that had the cassette drive integrated in it? In the is that what those orange buttons on the bottom left are?
Could.
I thought there was a system like that had the cassette drive integrated.
I know which one you're saying.
Yeah.
And say maybe Ed will flood the market and bring prices down. There's some more of his Mac collection. Some of the, I think it's a Quadra on the right, maybe, or it might even be a later PowerPC one. I'm not sure.
Mac Plus.
PCs. Yep. The original 512. Well, not the original, but 512K model.
1 meg.
The actual WAS signed Apple II GS.
Yeah.
And some Centruses, I think, on the left there.
IBM on the back.
Yeah.
There.
The WAS one was painted on the case. The first, if I remember right, 50,000 units came like that.
Yeah, and he had one of each, one with the WAS signature and then just one of the regular ones. That's a TI 99, I'm pretty sure there.
Yeah.
Several of them, actually.
4A, most likely.
Yeah, no, silver 4A. Because it wasn't the other one white or something? I can't even remember anymore.
Yeah, the later ones were white.
The new one was, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, that's Hoarder Jim, or Hoarder Ed.
Well, you know, if a person started buying stuff, 8 years ago, I mean, stuff on eBay was far, far cheaper just 8 years ago. Now it's just crazy, some of the prices. I mean, I watched CoCo 3 the other day. There was nothing fancy about it. And the last minute, it went from 200. I think someone, by the time they paid shipping, it was over $400 that somebody dropped down for a CoCo 3.
Was that at least like 512 or 2 meg or something, or was it just 128?
It was just a regular CoCo 3. People must just got caught up in the auctioning side and just went nuts. So, yeah.
So what Ed actually has here is an investment for his retirement.
Yeah.
Potentially, yes.
By the time he actually does retire, he'll be selling these for like $1,000 each. He's probably got enough to buy another house at this point.
Or he's got a problem.
Yeah, he's got a problem of having too much money. He's like you with your Ferraris.
Oh, yeah. I keep my Ferraris in the lounge room as well.
Hey, we were going to talk about that, Nick.
This was one is from Robin Buckley. It's kind of under sad circumstances, this particular CoCo. His dad passed away, and his mom was trying to get rid of some stuff that she didn't need. And so he received his father's old CoCo 1 with 32K RAM and a fairly low serial number. This is a PAL CoCo because he's in the UK. And so people are speculating this might actually be from the second run of boards because this looks like a bit more modern. But here you can see it's 119. I have seen 3-digit ones before in the States, so that kind of conclusively proves that the serial numbers were started over again, either for PAL in general, maybe in different countries, I'm not sure, but definitely that number was reused. That was so, we're always trying to figure out what the final sales of the CoCo were, because for some reason, Mark Siegel and the rest of the Tandy people just won't reveal it, and I don't know why, since Tandy no longer exists, really. But that does prove that the numbering did start over, so there is probably a bit more than some people think were sold. And this one actually got officially upgraded. You can see the stickers on the bottom from Radio Shack Tandy themselves here, upgrading the ROM to extended basic and upgrading the RAM to 32K. And he also got, go ahead.
Were even the PAL versions manufactured here in the States? Because it does say, US, by Tandy on the bottom there. So
I think they were.
Yeah, the CoCo ones for sure. I think, like we were mentioning before in the SCART one, I think the later CoCo 2s were actually manufactured in Korea, no matter what country they went to. So.
Yeah.
The funny thing here is, of course, even though this is a UK version of the CoCo with 240, it does spell color wrong. I mean, the American way.
Yeah.
Now, the model number there, Mark, you were talking about that other one. Is that the same model, 263004A? Is that the same series? Like, are all PAL ones the same, or would SCART be a different postfix?
I think 3004 was.
Or is that just mean the voltage?
They have 3004 here because I have one. I have a 3004.
Okay.
Yeah, I have several. I have several 04s and A's, and they're all.
I think the A referred to the F board.
Okay.
Makes sense.
So the model number is actually the same whether it was a PAL or an NTSC.
Yeah, I think so. Well, the first version wasn't it a 3002?
One. I have one also. I have a
3001,
3001 and 3004. Yeah,
Yeah,
3001 is a 4K standard basic. And I have a 3004 that has 16K in standard basic.
Well, wouldn't this one have been a? Because this one started off as a regular basic with
4K
or probably 4K.
Yeah, probably 16K because it's a 3004.
Yeah. Okay.
Wow.
So I probably started with 16K, and then it was the extended basic is the 3018, and the 3017 is the 32K. So.
Okay.
So it probably actually has 64K in it then.
Probably there was a few of the early upgrades. I don't know if that happened in the UK, but there was some of the early upgrades in the States where the chips were not totally good on both banks. So they did sometimes sell. There were 64K chips technically, but sometimes they actually did not work on the upper bank. So they sold them as 32s. But that, from what I understood, did not last too long. And they just said, it's just easier to get chips we know work all the way through because it just caused less problems down the line. And they started selling.
Yeah, because they just had to match them up as being upper bank or lower bank that were good.
Yeah.
So they had to test them and match them.
And it probably has the jumpers on there too, right on the system board there for jumping it between 16 and 64.
And up.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the E-board. I didn't have an E-board. I had a D, which only had jumpers for 4 and 16K. If you wanted to go past that, you had to hack the circuit board. I did have a friend of mine that had 32K, and I think it actually had a 3-way jumper, went 4K, 16K, and 32K. There was no 64K option on the board as far as the jumpers were concerned.
Interesting.
And just a couple comments in the chat here. Jim R said he just paid $319 for a CoCo 3. James Diffendaffer mentioned his first CoCo 3 was $25 boxed. So obviously that's from a while ago. He also mentions, though, that the serial numbers were started over for each revision. He has a 175 in the original case, but he thinks it's an F board. So that would mean that they would have, restarted from the C board, the D board, the E board, and the F board. And we've seen some in the tens and hundreds of thousands on some of the F boards. So once again, it points that there's probably more CoCo sold than some people think, but we still don't know. And Tandy their employees just will not tell us. Okay, next one here is from Nathan Bird. He's put up some pictures here on Facebook showing is hooking up a Teensy 3.5, and I'll have to let the Marks chime in exactly what that is, to his CoCo 3 and being able to read the data bus using it with some screenshots. So what's a Teensy?
A little microcontroller.
Yeah, like a Arduino kind of thing.
Except it uses, I think it's a ST microelectronics processor.
Okay, so here's actually dumping stuff off the bus here, and then here's it plugged in with the, I'm assuming the USB cable there is probably for data and power or something?
Just power. It's actually wired directly to the bus. If you look at the pictures, it has wires on the bottom hooking it up.
Okay.
So the TC 3.5 is 5-volt tolerant, so you just hook it directly up to the data bus on the color computer.
Okay, yeah, I remember there might even be another story here, but there was another Teensy thing where I think they said the 4.0 and above don't handle 5 volts anymore. They only do 3.3 or something?
3.6, yeah. So you need to use basically level shifters with them. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I think Bill was chiming in on that. That hardware stuff's just over my head, so I'll just take your word for it. You could absolutely lie to me. I wouldn't have a clue. Next one, this was kind of interesting, and maybe Nick can talk about this because this is an Australian story. So Alexander von Hartmann used to work at the Australian CoCo headquarters. In fact, I think he was one of the head guys. And this is a picture of him in the Australian CoCo office in the 86, 87 time frame. Now, that was an alternative magazine to Rainbow, was it not?
It was, there was
left?
the Rainbow originally, which was basically a magazine being published, I think, in Sydney or in Melbourne. And they would take copies of the American magazine and then sort of they have a license to print them in their Australian Rainbow. But that guy died. He died somewhere along the way. And it all moved to the Gold Coast, which is near me. And they started up the Australian Rainbow. They were still licensing from the American Rainbow, but they wanted to open up a Australian specific magazine. So they opened up a second magazine called the Australian CoCo. And that guy there, he was the editor of that magazine. And the original guy looked after the Australian Rainbow. I never met him, but yeah, I do remember him. But he was the editor at the time.
Okay.
For Australian CoCo.
Because he mentions in the text that he's got a CoCo 3, which you can see on the left, and a CoCo 2 on the right. And he was talking about doing things like disk duplication and double-sided drives and stuff. So it sounded like they're pretty advanced.
I think they did also have a cassette subscription as well. So yeah, a lot of the programs that were in the magazine, you could buy them on cassette. So I assume that's what the cassette player there is for.
Yeah, because I remember Rainbow, they had pictures when they did their tour of their offices in Rainbow, and they had these cassette and disc duplicators that would like write out 5 or 10 copies at a time.
Yeah.
So I guess Bryce has been talking to him a little bit, and we're going to see if we can actually get him on the show at some point too.
Yeah,
that'd be a pretty good interview to see what the Australian magazine market was like.
Yeah, it wasn't a bad magazine actually.
I don't know if it was a requirement to wear pink pants or not, but
hey, it's an Australian thing.
Those are shorts.
There is a nice OS9 manual on the shelf above his head there. So
yeah, I noticed that the first time I looked at the picture too. That just stood out. And like disc manuals and stuff beside it. But
yeah, notice it's up high, out of reach.
Well, that's because it's heavy. It's holding down the whole desk. It's thousands of pages. I'm really hoping that they can make that arrangement to get him on the show, because that'd be awesome to have him on to discuss the history of, as you mentioned, if he did work for the Australian Rainbow as well as the Australian magazines, that we can kind of get a history of both.
Yeah, it'd be good to hear the backstory there.
Now, did you know him at all? You said you never visited.
No, I never met him. No, I don't know him.
Did you advertise any of your stuff in there?
I did have an advert for when I did Neutroid 2. I actually did print a half-page ad in the Australian CoCo. I sold 0.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. I'll try hard.
And now you're up to 5. It's probably the wrong game to put in there, to be honest. But don't tell me you probably would have sold something. But Neutroid was more of a brain F than for most people, I think. Okay, we got a couple here from Jeff Salzman, and actually, Chet, you'll be familiar with this one here because it was actually the episode you were showing in the background while you're doing some of your digger testing, which is the CoCo being quite prominently featured in a couple of episodes of Silver Spoons, and it's a show I never remember. I didn't watch that when I was young. I don't remember the show much at all. So Chet, you probably know more about it than I do.
Oh, it was a great show. It was an absolute. I actually remember this episode, particularly because Gary Coleman was on it, and he was so big at the time. I think this was 82. This was the first or second season, but yeah, that was and this isn't the only episode with the CoCo. I think that the next episode has like a CoCo 2 in it.
Yeah, I have that picture queued up too.
So they actually have it working.
Yeah.
They actually wrote programs to run
for it. It's freaking awesome.
Yeah, they actually had like the text going by like they're breaking into steal airplane plans and.
I mean, the story was completely ridiculous, but yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, they actually wrote software to they filmed the software running on the screen type thing, and then they actually drew like a PMO 3 picture of a fighter jet or something like that, and then that's the plans they stole. Obviously a documentary, but
So he's got all these gadgets on him. He's meant to be a little computer nerd, is he?
Yeah, computer whiz kid. And then
Whiz kid.
Arnold was playing a reporter for a school newspaper or something.
Yeah, except he's Arnold Jackson in this episode, not Arnold.
Oh, right,
Muhammad,
yeah,
so,
right.
Yeah.
And of course, the FBI come to his house, which actually some of us actually have some real familiarity with. So, that was kind of interesting. And then, like Chet was mentioning, there was a second episode later, done quite a bit later, because now he's upgraded to like having a printer and disk drives instead of a cassette deck like he had in the first one, a CoCo 2. And I didn't see this episode. I don't know if you played this one, Chet. I didn't get a chance to catch all your streams here, but is that CoCo kind of hooked up to his exercise machine? Is that what this premise is here?
Yeah. I haven't streamed this one yet. I've got to find it. But yeah, he's got the whole thing, set up, and I think they did a zoom in on this one too, of the screen. But yeah, I remember this episode. It was awesome, especially when I saw the disk drives and the little CGP printer there, because I always wanted to get one of those, and when I saw it in there, I wanted it even more.
It's an early virtual reality thing.
But we're like kind of like the Apple Watch of the day. It's monitoring your exercise progress, right?
Yeah. It's a Fitbit.
Where did they find the room to put the controller?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't actually know. Maybe they probably don't have the drives hooked up to it.
It probably plugs into the joysticks.
Yeah.
Into the analog and into the DAC.
Yeah, I think you're talking about the drives though, because the drives are too close to the CoCo to actually fit the cartridge.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Unless they have that short stubby controller.
Yeah. No, I don't think that it's. I don't think they had the short stubby controller by this time, because they were still using the full height stand-up drives rather than the half height side.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
I mean, there are the white ones, which is a little bit later than the old gray ones, but
mine came with the older large controller, and it was the last set of white ones. In fact, they would have come out at the same time as this one. If you look at the keyboard, that's not the that's right after the low profile keys were replaced.
Yeah, it's a full height keyboard.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, obviously you watched that show when you were younger, Chet, and I didn't get a chance to. Was the CoCo in more than 2 episodes? Like, was it a running thing throughout the series, or did it just appear once in a while?
No, it was just, I think it was only in 2. It might have been in the 3rd one. The only reason why I watched the show was because of Erin Gray. She was, from Buck Rogers and all that. So, I mean, that was really the only reason why anybody watched the show. It wasn't exactly, the greatest thing on the planet. So, but
yeah, she was hot. I remember that. I remember watching Buck Rogers for that too.
Yeah, so it was. I mean, seeing the CoCo there was great, but yeah, that wasn't why I tuned in.
Yeah, they should have had the CoCo hooked up as a heart monitor, and then every time she walked in there, we could just watch his heart rate go up. So,
oh, that would have been good. I don't know if they were still going with some of those like family oriented standards at the time. I don't know, before Bill Cosby started like molesting people and shit. So,
well, before we go too far down that dark road, we'll go on to the next one. Oh no, I guess we're not. We're still going down a dark road. Okay, so Andrew Marshall put up an interesting CoCo that he got. And I'll let the picture speak for itself as I zoom up this picture here. This is the sticker they had on.
I'm evidence.
Yep. Date was found, located, and developed.
I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, not the normal warranty sticker.
No.
So obviously, a CoCo that was stolen at one point, and then entered as evidence.
Either stolen or I don't know, with
used used in the crime.
Yeah, exactly.
Might have been bank hacking,
or they bludgeoned somebody with. I mean,
I did like David Moakes. Yeah, I did like David Moakes' comment here. He says, as you can plainly see, someone has disturbed the warranty sticker and paid the price.
And they probably got beat with it.
There is an odd spot there on that right side.
Yeah. It's just like somebody got cracked in the nugget with it.
Yeah. So I've never seen one at a CoCo with those stickers on it before. I guess the rest of us never got caught. So.
So there's a difference between getting caught and getting raided.
Yeah. Actually, I did have a friend who got raided. He was he wasn't a CoCo user though. He was, what was he back then? I think he was an Amiga user, and he actually got his confiscated by the RCMP because he got caught, breaking into computer systems. So Richard Harding here, and this is back to the Teensy, and he's doing some sample code to convert it, and this is the Dragon group. A Dragon keyboard to USB using the Teensy 2.0. Now, Mark, you have to tell me what exactly a Teensy 2 is versus a 3 and a 4.
The processor's not as fast. I don't remember the specifics, but it's not nearly as capable as the newer ones, the bigger ones. So obviously it handles USB internally.
Yeah, and a keyboard would be a fairly simple USB interface. It's a slower USB.
Very slow. So. Yeah.
Hey, it's cool that the Dragons are getting some of the same types of hardware projects we're doing, with even some of the same base hardware to add on some of these extra features. So, James Jones has a comment. Long ago, someone called me to go to a place where the Des Moines police keep seized items. The caller knew I was a CoCo user, and they'd seized a CoCo 3. I went over there and got it. Well, that's a cheap way to get CoCos. It's probably even cheaper than eBay. I'll have to keep an eye out. Another one from the Dragon Group here. Roger Taylor, who of course is in charge of the Mr. CoCo and has done some other previous hardware projects based on the CoCo, including the Matchbox, which Bill has. So he's got the CoCo 3 basically working pretty good in the Mr. And he's decided to do a Dragon. So he's working on the Dragon 64 base here, and he's getting some tips. Like, so the disk controller works a little bit differently. The DOS is definitely completely different. So he's been working on getting that working and getting some help from Phil Harvey Smith, and Karen was helping him with some of the stuff too. And then he's got a video that he did shortly after this post that actually shows him booting it up. And I'll just boot it up to the point where the game is running, but he actually gets Astroblast running from the native Dragon virtualized hardware. And here you can see the interface that it uses. And then Mr. of course can actually emulate a ton of machines. So if you want a good emulation machine based on hardware rather than just software like MAME, this is a good system to get, because you can get cores for just about everything. And he's still working on this as definitely an early beta, as he put it. But it seems to work. And the colors look a bit goofy here. I'm not sure if that's because he hasn't got that fully working, or the fact that this is emulating a PAL system. I'm not sure if he's emulating NTSC or PAL. I know it doesn't look like this on the CoCo itself. It doesn't have the vertical lines and stuff that you can see on the spaceships, and the fuel bar definitely looks weird. But it seems to be, it's getting the point of running software properly. So for those of you who've missed it, keep an eye out for when he gets the final release done. Next one, we got a lot of Dragon stuff here today. This next one here is actually a pretty decent book. I took a brief look through it. Obviously, I haven't read the whole thing, but it's Advanced Sound and Graphics for the Dragon Computer. Now, most of it at the beginning is basic, but it gets into like 3D drawing and algorithms for doing that, and hidden line removal and all that kind of thing. And then it has a section on doing some machine language subroutines for like scrolling the screen and stuff too. So it's not the simple graphics book where basically just, regurgitates all the stuff you'd get in the manual of how to draw a circle or something with a circle command. It actually gets into quite a bit of detail. So I'll just show you the table of contents. It's a pretty good sized book. Beyond basic is when you're getting into obviously doing some machine language routines. So how to access the keyboard, how to draw high-res characters on the screen using basic, and animation, sound to synthesis. And then he does the actual summaries and stuff here. But it's a pretty decent looking book. I mean, if you want to learn programming for the CoCo graphics and sound system too, all this stuff will apply, because the graphics are done exactly the same between the two, and the sound's done pretty well exactly the same between the two as well. So this is an actual alternative, and this is a freely available PDF you can download, which is nice too. So if you guys want to learn some of the techniques of doing some of the 3D stuff in BASIC, which I don't think too many of the CoCo-based CoCo-based books did. I don't think most of them actually did cover that particular subject as much as this did. It's a pretty decent book.
Books that cover it all on any of them.
Yeah, like Mark, you actually brought up, there was an Apple II one that kind of explained some of the 3D drawing stuff there that you'd brought up.
This one.
Yeah. So this is kind of the CoCo / Dragon equivalent, but it was meant for the Dragon first. And as far as I know, this book never came out for the CoCo technically, even though pretty well almost all of it applies. So it's a pretty decent book from my quick glance through it. This one here I found kind of funny. This is now the layout of the CoCo VGA is such that it doesn't fit properly into a Dragon with some of the other hardware pieces that are in there. So this is Tony Jewell's solution, as he called it, the terrible tower of turn pin sockets. I will get this CoCo VGA card to fit in a Dragon 32 if it kills me. In fact, I've just ordered another 10 40-pin sockets. I want to see how higher this tower can go. So that's one way to do a stacked upgrade. And actually, Brendan chimed in a little bit later and mentioned that he actually did the same thing when he was first making sure it would work with a Dragon. So he has this picture here. I don't think he quite meant as many sockets. I don't know if this is a manly thing of how many sockets you can get crammed in there to get it to actually still work. But he has made an updated version. I think it was either Ed or Brendan mentioned there's an updated version of the board that's rotated at a certain angle that makes it much easier to put into a Dragon, unless you have one of the taller RAM upgrades from back in the day.
Yeah, I have my Dragon's been upgraded with the VGA on it, and I did not have to do that. I just had to desolder the VDD chip and put a socket in there, and it snaps right in. So.
Okay, but it doesn't look as cool.
No. I did ask him, if you flip back a previous picture, if you zoom in on that, you can see there on the stack, there's a chip or a pin that's actually bent over, the one that's close.
Oh yeah, on the right-hand side there, about second from the top.
I mentioned that, and I guess that's a data line that's not used, and actually, I guess that was a common practice that they did, was to bend that over, because it causes problems if it's not, I guess. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I thought it might have been by error, and he said it was deliberate. So yeah.
Okay. Now I know, like we had some stacked things, like when the 609s came out, the original DAT board that Disto sold was put over top to 6809, and they added up fairly high to get over capacitors and other things too. But we didn't stack tons of sockets. We just had, some pins that actually kind of went inwards into a double header connector. And the whole pin thing was about as tall as this is, instead of using like 5, 6, 7, 8 sockets. It was just one thing that you soldered each of the 40 pins to the CPU, and then it brought it together to a double header that you plug the DAT board in, and then the DAT, of course, went off to the RAM board.
A couple of the CoCo ones you have to stack, and if you buy one, Brendan usually gives you 2 extra sockets with it when you buy it, so you can stack it up and to get it high enough. But then you still have to cut that post off that goes in the center of the board right there. And at first I was a little reluctant about wanting to cut that post off, because he didn't have the style anymore that has the hole in the middle of the board that would go around that center post on a CoCo 1. And I was actually looking at making a kind of like a remote board. There was enough room underneath the keyboard. I was actually looking at putting together a little circuit board with a ribbon cable and relocating the VGA board under the keyboard and then extending it out that way, so I didn't have to hack up but I ended up cutting the post. But well, I wasn't sure if there'd be a signaling issues or not if you started putting too much distance on the data lines. So
yeah, that would be my worry, especially going through all these sockets. So.
Yeah, but it certainly looks cool.
Yeah, the leaning tower of chips or something. I'm not sure what you want to call it. But.
I have a 40 pin, or excuse me, what would that? Are these 20 pin are these 40 pin or 40? I can't remember. Yeah,
40 I believe. Yeah.
Yep. So I actually have a 40 pin wire wrap socket. If you guys remember those from the days, they had the wire wraps had the really long pins on them, and I thought about trying. There you go. Yeah, I thought about trying one of those out to see if that would stack it high enough without having to stack a whole bunch of sockets.
Did it work?
I haven't tried it yet. I got it sitting there. I had a box of I happened to have an opportunity to grab a box of stuff from a Radio Shack way back in the day. It was about a 2 foot by 2 foot square box. It was completely full of stuff that the store manager did not want to put back on the shelf. They didn't want to take the time to sort it, and she sold me the whole box for like $20. And there's all sorts of various Radio Shack things. And I was rummaging through it one day, and I came across that, and it's like, oh, I'll have to try this out. So I got it sitting on the desk. Haven't done anything with it though.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And the next story is another Dragon story, the last one for the regular news here. And this is kind of a unique way to handle the COVID crisis, because of course the UK has been hit, as hard as the States, if not harder. Actually, I think their death rate's actually a higher proportion of the population. But it was kind of an interesting way to deal with masks and still be related. So they actually have Dragon logo masks. I thought that's a cool idea. So did a lot of other people. Unfortunately, John Woodworth, the guy that got these custom made by Contrato, a company over there, he's not selling them. He made a few for himself, and that's it. But I thought it was a pretty cool idea.
I wonder if the place that makes the CoCoTALK T-shirts would be able to do something like that for us.
Yeah, I mean, we've only got, hopefully only 6 months to a year to have these as a hot item, and after that they'll be collector's items. So maybe we should get Stevie to start making some of those and selling them off. We can all wear them at the next Coco Fest there. Might
There
have
you
to,
go.
actually, depending.
Yes.
Okay, this year's the home computer course, and this is one Darren Ottery posted, and this is actually from the 8384. It's their 17th course. Now, they've made versions of this for the ZX81 and a few other machines as well, but this was an actual MC10 one, and it kind of reminds me of the one that Brian Schubring was showing. Like here, you can see the cover of the course actually shows the Sinclair, or maybe it's the Timex one, I'm not sure which, but
it's a ZX81, so it's the Sinclair.
But this here is the actual MC10 version of that same little kit, and it has a breakout of the board and what all the chips are and how it works, etc. So this is kind of reminds me of the one that Brian Schubring did with the Coco 3 and the Coco 2. So go ahead.
I was going to say, did you notice the joystick? It was very Dragon-esque.
The Sinclair one, you mean?
Yeah, on the previous picture.
Oh yeah, it is too. I guess that's where Dragon stole the idea from.
Maybe, yeah.
I don't remember there being any joysticks for the ZX. I mean, it's you just had the connection port on the back. You could plug in a printer or a RAM pack, but
none of those 15 extensions on the back that made the thing 15 feet long supported joysticks. Or
no, that you're thinking of the TI-99/4A.
Yeah.
No, that went sideways. The ZX went backwards, but you could link literally 6 or 7. I had a friend of mine here that actually had a whole bunch, but I don't remember joystick either, to be honest.
There was a third-party company that had a joystick interface.
There was? Okay.
I think it used the Atari 910.
I mean, we got kind of lucky. We had a multi-pack, so you had one thing that had 4 slots you could add extra cards to, unless you want to be like David O'Connor and actually plug multi-packs into multi-packs, even with the power on.
My uncle actually had a ZX81, and he made a custom joystick for it that he basically rigged into the keyboard matrix. He put a plug on the side, and so it'd plug in. I have it now. It plugs it in, so you can select with jumpers what buttons you want to represent. And it's got a XY joystick that you can.
Oh, interesting.
I'll have to post. I have a picture posted on my one website. I'll have to post it for everybody.
That'd be cool. I mean, we're all into all kinds of retro computers here. We obviously have our favorites, but it's interesting to see what everybody else was doing. Next up, now this is a video that Brian Blake had recorded. I think he said like around 2013 or 2014 or something. It was showing off Bill Pierce's Sound Chaser, which is a multi-format sound player for OS9. It handles Ultimuse 3 files, Lyra files, Musica files. It'll play some of the formats through the 6-bit DAC. Others it might play through the ORC90. It also plays through MIDI synths, obviously, either through the Bitbang or the MIDI card that Jim Brain is now reproducing again. So he did a big demo here, and he actually plays a whole bunch of copyrighted music, so I can't play too much of it here. I'll just play like a little schmidge. But he was showing off some of the features of like the different formats it can play and how good some of the formats actually sound if you have the decent synthesizer plugged into it. And also showing the playlist capability where you can actually have a list of a whole bunch. You can pick songs to play in a certain order and make your own sort of jukebox type thing. So I will play a little bit from here.
And we'll start off by playing a song that most Disney fans probably already know.
And Disney, I'll definitely have to cut it off soon. But it sounds pretty decent. I don't want to get a copyright ding there, so I'll fast forward a little bit to one he particularly liked. It was quite well done for a MIDI track. Just Enter Sandman by Metallica, of course. Anyway, I didn't want to get a copyright ding on this, but it was pretty amazing. Like I remember the first time when Bill actually had a synth Symphony 12, which I think Chet you've heard too, which was a very good sounding set of 4 regular sound chips. And then when you started seeing the actual MIDI synths, like you get a professional Yamaha DX7 or something like that, it even sounded better than that. And I'm hearing that stuff coming from a CoCo, and some people use CoCos on stage hooked up to their MIDI synth, playing all these songs as background tracks for like mini bands that only had a singer and a guitarist or something. So a lot of pretty good music and a lot of composed music. I mean, the author of this, Michael Knudsen, actually was a composer in his own right and wrote quite a few songs himself that he included on Ultimuse 3. He used to like doing ragtimes and some older style stuff too. So it was pretty amazing to hear the stuff coming from a CoCo, especially on the CoCo 1 and 2, because back then, I mean, that was, you know, pre-Amiga, pre-Atari ST. That was pretty amazing to hear on a little 8-bit.
Is this what's called Sound Chaser? Is that available?
Yep. Yep. Bill Pierce's website has it. Okay. If you want to download it.
Okay.
In fact, I might even have it on EOU. I haven't officially mentioned it because I haven't actually figured out how to do everything on it yet myself. But I think I've actually got it pre-installed and at least some of it. So
Okay.
you might be able to actually fire it up even right now on EOU 5.
Okay, I'll go look for it.
It might be
You'll
on
have to
that
install the
disk
MIDI
image
driver,
I
though.
gave you.
What's that?
I gave Brian what my disk image, and I think I might even have. I think it's a little bit earlier version of Sound Chaser on it.
Okay.
I think.
Okay. I'm pretty sure I do have it on EOU though. So as long as you modify the boot file to add in a MIDI driver, either the MIDI for the MIDI board that you've got, or you can send it to a PC and have it go through its MIDI synthesizer. You should be able to output the music. Ask Brian though for more details. Brian asked Brian.
Yeah, I've already talked to him this evening earlier
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, we were on.
Since you're more
we
familiar
got-
with it, I did fiddle with Ultimuse back in the 90s, but I haven't really touched it since because I don't have a synthesizer anymore. So the next one's a very brief bit from Brett Gordon, who's been working on getting some TCP/IP and UDP stuff working on the CoCo, and he's using the emulator to show it here. But he's actually got a kind of a debugger monitor program that's running on a CoCo 3 that it actually is using UDP protocol to send the debugging through the serial ports. So I'll just do it. There's not much to see here, but it's kind of more of a proof of concept at this point. He's still working on this project, but it's pretty cool that he's actually getting some of this stuff running natively, because then we can actually start running and writing games and stuff that might actually go through TCP/IP at some point.
That's the plan. I'm sure a lot of stuff he does uses DriveWire. So,
I mean, he is the one that did that RC chat game back at CoCo Fest a few years back, Thermonuclear War, or whatever it was called.
Yep, Global Thermonuclear War. Yeah, GTW.
No, that required going through a DriveWire to a PC to function. If I remember, that couldn't run
And
on
then
its
connect
own.
to an IRC server. Yep.
But now that we've got some of these other ESPs and stuff that can actually let the CoCo directly hook up to some of these things. Now, Mark, do you know, is there, like, I think one of the issues now is because all the browsers are starting to require HTTPS. Is there versions of the ESP yet that handle that natively so the CoCo can still get online?
Yeah, the ESP32, which is the faster one, can do the SSH, SSL, that sort of stuff. So
Okay, so we still have an opportunity for CoCo to really get on the web itself without requiring a second computer.
Yeah, and then again, for what it's worth, you could go through a proxy, or and if you set up your web server so it doesn't demand SSL, then it'll still work. I mean, the cloud server I have set up, I do not force you to use HTTPS, so that something as simple as a CoCo could access the web page.
Okay. That's something I would like to start fiddling around once we got hardware plugins that I can do it directly with having to try to write a TCP/IP stack on my own or something like that. If it can have a hardware card that handles that stuff for me and I just get the data as it's assembled back together, that'd be much easier. And that is the go ahead.
Yeah, even the simple, like the ESP 8266s that aren't quite up to the SSL, they could still do that sort of stuff. Like the Alan Huffman, he set up with the what is it, the modem, so you can basically dial like a modem, and then it just does a serial link with over TCP/IP. So
okay, cool. And that is the end of the regular news. So I'm going to stop sharing and let you throw in a commercial break there, Mark. Yeah, and we've got a little bit of GameON news to add, and then we've actually got some of the people that starred in these on the panel, so that'll be interesting.
All right, let me find which one I already planned on running here.
And now, this message.
Hi, it's Curtis Boyle, part of the CoCoTALK crew of people.
Hey everybody, this is Bill Noble co-author of Nitrous 9. You are listening to CoCoTALK Live, the leading live Coco Talk show.
Good day, mates. This is Nick Marionettes, author of such color computer titles as Donut Disaster, Rupert Rhymes, and Rockstar Pilot. And I am here today to tell you about the world's most fabulous operating system, OS 9. OS 9 and its current incarnation Nitrous 9 is the most advanced operating system ever created. And what makes it so good? Ease of use. I find OS 9 so incredibly intuitive that I haven't once cracked open the user manual. And yet I've been able to create such incredible games faster than the time it takes to sing Waltzing Matilda. Using OS 9, I expect my next game, Funstar, will be done this weekend and distributed exclusively on ROM cartridge. OS 9 forever.
Any resemblance to actual events to persons living or dead is purely coincidental.
Hi, this is Max Jackson live from Coco Fest. And listen to The Real Gamer, Steve Schroe.
We're traveling through a dimension both of sound and ideas. We're at a place where the mind can comprehend and devise a solar radio, a wireless transmitter, measure time and light. 65 electronic projects brought to reality with this science fair kit. Astonishing? Perhaps. But you can find it for Christmas for $17.95 in a place that's known as Radio Shack.
Radios, stereos, recorders, everything in sound. A whole new approach. Faster than ever. A window to a world of possibilities. Clear your expectations. Clear your hesitation. Just hit clear.
Download EOU today at lcurtisboyle.com.
Hi, this is Sean Wheatley, and you're listening to CoCoTALK with the original gamer, Stevie Stroh.
All right, you're on.
Okay. So welcome to the Game On portion of the news, and take it away, Nick. No, I'm just kidding. So we have a few videos here and some other game news. So the first one up is Jim Gary, of course, because he's pretty well on every week. So there's two ports and port updates that he did this week. So I will share my screen to show you guys that. So this here is a Calibeth, which is a port of the very first 3D dungeon crawl that Origin Systems did ever before Ultima. And he'd ported this before for the MC10 requiring the 16K RAM add-on pack. So this one has an updated font that's a little bit more legible because he's using lower res graphics because it's all you can do in the MC10 without hardware mods. And it's a little bit faster. So this is showing the outdoor scenes, and I very distinctly remember playing this back in like 79, 80 on the Apple II. That was actually my first experience doing a D&D style game on a computer after playing the real Dungeons and Dragons from about 76, 77, I guess it was. But the font's definitely a lot better. It was actually hard to read some of the letters on his original font. Speed-wise, it's a tiny bit faster, but not a ton.
It's attractive.
It looks a little thin there.
And it was all written in BASIC. There was no machine language routines in this thing at all. It was just all Applesauce BASIC back in the day. I think I might still end up, I was thinking about doing this a while ago, I might actually port this to BASIC 09 and run it at the full res and just throw it in on ease of use with the source code so people can kind of fiddle with it. But it should run at a pretty good clip. I might even make it so it can actually size in a window so you can play it side by side with Rogue or your clock alarm or something like that if you wanted to. And the second one he did is he did a port of Ono by Charles Bartlett, which we've actually shown on the show before. It's based on the card game Uno, but it's all run in semi-graphics. So he's done an MC10 port of this too with little bits of sound. I'll just fast forward a little bit here. So, and he's done some pretty interesting cards. And most of it's just, the flat deck colors and then the numbers on them. But he's got some of the ones that actually have the multicolored. If you guys played Uno before, there's some multicolored cards. You can change the color that's being played and reverse direction stuff. And he actually does do that a little bit himself here. Let's see if we can find that one. Sample. No, that wasn't it. Oh, here we are. So the one on the right here, changing the color. Oh, went a bit too far. It's got the 4 colors, and then the player gets to pick what the new color you have to follow is. So I mean, at this point, the MC10 actually has a pretty huge game library, and almost all of it's thanks to Jim Gary. So we've had some other people doing some other development for it as well. And next up, we have some Chet stuff. And Chet's actually on the call, so that's kind of convenient. So Chet, you did a bunch of streams this week. You did a bunch of stuff, testing out Digger 3 levels on easy and hard, and then you're doing some tweaks. You did some bug fixes. Then you started doing level design of a higher one. You wanted to replace a level you weren't too happy with. And then you took a break to play Super Pitfall, which actually I didn't get a chance to catch the beginning of that. So I'll play the Super Pitfall part first. If you just want to explain what prompted you to pick that game to play as a kind of a break from Digger.
Yeah, I was looking for something to play. And I went and I like to find out what cartridges I had and see what games I had on the shelf. Just to, because I could pull something off the emulator if I wanted to, but I wanted to play it on the CoCo, and I did play it a little bit on the Rogue, on Rogue CoCo that morning. And I'm really fascinated by this game because it's a very terrible design. Technologically, I like what Steve did with it, but the design itself, I can't believe they actually greenlit this. This is considered the NES version is just terrible as far as a game goes, and this kind of stuff right here is one of the things where you drop down this ladder and you just fall into fire. That kind of stuff is all over the map. It's really terrible, and this right here is the water.
Chet, were you able to watch our interview with Glenn earlier today?
I caught parts of it.
Because that's actually something he mentioned too, the fact that he was talking about games that were designed where you had no idea where you were going, and you had to learn by dying what you were allowed to do in a map. And he said he did that same mistake in Warrior King. You had to jump off a cliff and land in water and die. Yeah,
it's a cheap approach to game. It's just really weak because you're trying to present some type of a puzzle, whereas this is like a cave exploration game. But now if you play it on easy mode or a novice mode, when you're running around, you'll get these little flickering symbols that you have to jump into. But if you play it on expert mode, which is what the Nintendo version does, by default, it doesn't have the mode selection. You don't get that. You have to basically jump around throughout the entire map in order to find stuff, and so it gets really, really frustrating because unlike like Pitfall 2, where you had kind of a clear idea of what you need to do, you didn't really have that here. The design, I can't say anything nice about it. I really can't. And I've got to look at some other videos since I started playing this, and there's some people who have just railed on this big time. I think the Angry Game Nerd or somebody just ripped this.
I know on the NES it's been universally chastised. Like everybody hates the game. It's one of the worst ever type of thing on that platform.
Yeah, which is really sad because it could be such a great game if the the overall design of it was much better, and that was one of the things that I wanted to do, is get some perspectives on some of the other games in the CoCo, because I wanted to make sure that didn't wasn't happening with Digger. Of course, I'm satisfied that it's not. Whereas it's puzzle based, whereas you got a design like this where, I mean, your goal is to die as many times as you can to figure out how not to die so you can get to the end. I mean, your basic goal here is really just to figure out how not to get your ass handed to you.
Yeah. Like all these, because of the play area is so small and you can't see far enough down to see what you're going to jump into, but you have no other choice. You can't go anywhere else except backtrack to where you came from. So it's not even exploring. It's just, like you said, it's just learning where are the dying points.
Yeah, and that's and I mean, even though you've got a slightly smaller field of view, it's not actually that much different than the NES, because even though the NES is full screen, it's also running a lot faster. So your response time is still going to be about the same, because you're looking at a handful of frames, maybe 100 milliseconds to by the time that you see that thing and you have to react to it. So, but if you know the map layout, if you actually memorize it, it becomes a lot easier. But still, you're dying throughout the entire thing to figure out how not to die. Although I gotta say, the balloon ride on this thing is awesome. I went on that thing several times. That was actually how the gun is floating there. You don't see that on expert mode.
Yeah, that always struck me strange. Like, why did they have these bonuses, like the card suits and stuff that you have to pick up these coin things? Why do they have them flickering in the first place? Like, why not just have it out? Like, why do you need to make it hard to see?
That was part of the original design. That's one of the changes that I'm glad that was made on the CoCo version, because you could go in and play, after you play expert mode, which is I think the default on this, and you get frustrated trying to figure out what you're doing, you go back to novice, you start seeing things, and you start realizing what you actually have to do. So it kind of gives you a clue, because as you're running around, you don't have to jump. You get within a certain distance of it, and it starts flickering and lights up and stuff. And this is the little stone guy. He likes to chase you around. You get these long.
Yeah, the Easter Island guy, as I call him.
Yeah, yep, Easter Island.
So there was a few things about this you did like, I guess, so like the balloon ride. You said that actually was fun. Was there any other things that are redeemable about the game?
Overall, I mean, it's I think for 128K CoCo game, it's fantastic. I mean, you're
yeah, the maze is huge.
Yeah, it is. It's I think 224 by 128 or 96 or something like that. It's a fairly sizable map that you have to traverse. I think they only have the one on this. I think that the NES version has two, where after you get to, I haven't gotten to the end of this yet, so I don't know if I will. Just the thought of having to die a bazillion times or cheat off the internet to get to the end. I don't know. It's although I might do it just to see what's there. But yeah, it's
have you noticed, other than the expert novice mode where you can actually see some of the bonus shapes, is there any other major differences between the Nintendo and the CoCo version? I guess you also mentioned the size of the viewing area, but is there any other, like, is any of the map differently? Is anything else in the game itself different from what you've seen?
Yeah, actually it is. There's sections of the map which are completely different than the NES version.
Okay, so there's some originality.
Yeah, there's. I mean, I've got the NES version in storage. I actually want to go get it because I've got an NES console now. But yeah, there's maps that are the I think like the bottom of this and the lower right hand corner is different. There's elements that are different, because in the NES version you have these like ropes swinging back and forth or whatever, chain, swinging back and forth that you can latch onto and swing across the thing, whereas in the CoCo version, it's the platforms that you jump onto, and then they
sink as you.
Yeah, they sink as you're standing on them. So those were a couple of the changes, but I think that the changes to the map were because of the size. Some sizing might have been different. I haven't actually looked at what this is. I have some basic information on the NES version as far as like the size and technical requirements of it.
Okay. I remember I did like the game when I first bought it, because it was visually impressive. Like the graphics are fairly well done, and the fact that it fit on a 32K cartridge. This wasn't even one of the MMU banked ones, I don't believe. So you
Yeah, I see
kinda
you got that
crammed-
diamond flash in there. Yeah.
And you're saying on the NES version that doesn't even show up. You just have to guess it's there.
Yeah, you have to jump up and do it. And then there's other elements. I don't want to give away what you have to do. I mean, there are other things that are far worse than that. I mean, there's actually some really terrible things that you have to deal with later on if those are actually included in this.
Okay.
Yeah, but all of it has to do with jumping. I mean, if anybody's curious, if you really want to go out and take a look, there's the Angry Game Nerd or whatever that guy is. Watch his video. It'll pretty much explain everything.
I also have to say I like your nicknames for a lot of the characters, which we can't repeat on the show. But
oh, you can repeat Little Nemo.
That one, yeah.
Yeah, you can't. Not the other one or the other one or the one up top or the stone guy. Really, yeah. I should probably work on that, but whatever.
Oh, it was funny. I was laughing my ass off as you were describing them. So
yeah, I really got to try out Mine Rescue again to see whether or not it's how much has changed, because I know that Steve changed a lot of the elements in there, so it you don't have that whole jumping around thing. You do have to find them. So I want to see what how those.
Yeah, because it basically it is the same engine, but you have to rescue miners and give them those air pack thingies and
right.
Yeah. And then, like you said, you did so many Digger 3 videos. I just happened to pick one here, and this was the one I think where you're doing some of the level design. Oops, that's not the right one.
Yeah, that's not my stuff, man.
There we are.
Oh yeah, level 24.
And it's going to do that stupid thing again. So this is a design tool I think you showed probably last year, I think, for actually designing the maps and stuff. Is it basically the same version? Has there been any updates to that software as well, or?
Yeah, this is actually a newer version. I mean, I'm not supporting any of the newer features, but this version actually has has project and world support in it, so you get kind of like a navigational thing on the left side. I just haven't converted everything over and set up my project and updated my conversion tool to support that yet. I'll probably get around to doing something like that after Digger, just to kind of get everything up and ready for the next game. But it's a wonderful tool. It's very simple and easy to use, and I haven't had any problems with it. It works really, really great for what I need to do with Digger.
Yeah, and I noticed it lets you zoom in at any point that you want to, if you want to fine tune very specific areas, and and then you've got those overlays where you can overlay the different tiles on top of each other for different, I guess, gameplay effects and stuff.
Yeah, you have multiple layers. You have you can actually have multiple tile layers, which I'll be using in my next engine, because I've got tile-based overlays, and then you'll have you've got multiple objects, which are basically just a list of objects which are stuck around on the map. It also supports isometric and lang sets and a bunch of other stuff that I have no clue that whether or not I need, because I just don't I haven't found any need for it. But yeah, it allows me to manage all the attributes, all of the definitions for things like the tiles, how the player acts, all within this particular interface, and then I ran it through my conversion tool, and it spits out a binary, and I go with that, and it works really, really well. I haven't had any problems with it. I can build and test a level. I can complete a level in a day, play testing, building, and all of that pretty easily.
Hey, and you actually showed some of the play testing here, like you actually had a compiling right to VCC, and you try something and you suddenly decide, no, that's too short of a time span for you to be able to dig through. And I think you even found one where you accidentally trapped yourself too when you first did it.
Yeah,
so it's kind of fun watching the meat being made type thing.
Yeah, it comes in handy because I can go through and I can test this. This particular level is being built around very heavy puzzles, which you start to see some of those in the earlier levels, like 5 and 7, and then the puzzles start to get a little more intense as you go up through the level. So this one is ended up being quite interesting. In fact, I've actually got to pull some of it back because it's actually way too difficult. It's an extremely difficult level. So by putting puzzles in here, rather than actually just trying to figure out how to get the gold, how to stay away from the Gomers, you actually have to figure out how to get to that particular piece of gold. It's not just, okay, run up this ladder, go over here and do this. You have to dig here, run over here, and grab the gold, and then get out before that block that you just dug closes up, so you don't either get trapped or dead. So and that's what this is here. So there's been some changes that have happened with the way that the Gomers work. Yeah, so you can't get in and out of there. So there was no way to get. So I added a ladder and a rope so we could, run back around so it's all based. There's a lot of timing based stuff. There's a lot of things that are actually pretty easy to get to if you don't have a bunch of Gomers swarming around you, which is something that you have to manage. You have to try to stay away from them. There are areas where you can trap Gomers so that you can actually get them out of the way. And then there's areas where you grab a gold and it releases a new Gomer. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do it, and there's levels where there's not just one way or one order of things that you have to do in order to get that, and it's all within the basic mechanics of this game, and the very few set of objects that have got things like the traps or the spikes that kind of slow you down. You've got the along with the Golgothan and the slime monster, you've got the bats, which really get in your way, and then you've got the Gomers, which aren't too bright sometimes, but really they're pretty pretty effective of getting to you when they really want to, and they do cause a lot of problems. So play testing that and making sure that the puzzles are doable, that you don't have too many Gomers that are getting away, that you can actually get through it within a reasonable amount of time, with a reasonable amount of skill on these. Having this tool and being able to visualize this stuff in this way makes a world of difference, because what I used to do in 3 or 4 hours on the CoCo back in the day, I can do in an hour or even 45 minutes now, and that's actually important because I don't have that much time as much time as I did back in the day.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the AI too. Like, I know you've been doing some tweaks to the AI. Is the AI consistent throughout the game, or does the AI actually vary by level?
It can vary. It can vary by level. I haven't used that too much because it's the volatility of something like that can change vastly, and that's not quite something that you just want to throw onto the player, because it's you start changing the weighted values that I use to decide. So you may have a 25% chance to go left at the top of a ladder. I change that, I flip that around, and you start to see a visible difference in that, and that can actually be too much of a problem.
Okay, so basically you're consistent for now, just because it makes it easier to design and debug.
Yeah, plus there's built-in variances that actually kind of keep that flow going, so you can try doing the same set of sequences time and time again, and you can actually get different outcomes from it because of the way that the AI is set up and the way it's pulling the RNG.
Cool. Anyway, I've been having a lot of fun watching these when I have had a chance to catch them there. Sometimes I have to not be able to comment because I'm busy doing something else, and I just have it kind of playing in the background. Other times I'll chime in, but definitely keep up the good work. It's still really looking forward to this game.
Yeah, it's actually been a lot of fun working on it. It's I think right now the vast majority of stuff that I'm doing right now is just play testing and tweaks to the levels. I mean, that's the real big thing right now. Something like the way that I had to change the guard AI for having them they can run into a block that you've dug now. If they fall into it, then they get stuck, but otherwise they can actually run into it. So if you're digging up at the top of a ladder, you've got some corner cases there, and at the bottom of the ladder, some things that they need to be taken care of and tweaked specifically for those situations. But it's maybe 10 lines of code here, 5 lines of code here, and then some testing to make sure that I haven't screwed something else up. So again, this tool helps facilitate and get that done real quick.
Cool. Definitely, we'll all be very interested when it comes out, and also just following your progress as you go through it here, showing some of the live plays and the live level design. Like it's kind of fun watching you think out loud while you're designing the level too. Like I'll put this here. Well, maybe that's a dumb idea. I might have to move this over here.
Yeah, you should hear what I make some the comments that I make pretty much during gameplay. Both Revolve. It's the same thing when I'm by myself, because
it's a stream of filthy consciousness is basically what it is.
So how close do you think you are to release?
I'm getting really close. I'm not putting any kind of date on it right now because there's there's
you just never know.
Well, no, it's I already I do know. I've actually got some busy time coming up here pretty soon, so I know that, but I don't know exactly how long it's going to last. And then I've got there's some review, because there are some physical copies of this game being made.
What was the name of the tool again you're using here?
Tiled.
Tiled, right? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so there are some physical copies that are being made. In fact, I've got the floppy disks. I've got a DMP 200 to print the labels with. I've actually got an LP 7 as well.
That's old school.
Yeah, so it's tiny. It's quieter, not by much, but it does. So I've got to do some of that. I'll be sending some of that stuff over to Eric. Make sure he's got a copy. He's getting the first copies of it, the first serial numbers on it, so at least the first 10. So that's really about. And once all that's done, everything will be released and put out. I don't know if I'm going to put it. I think I'll probably just post it up to the archive and send homie a note to say, hey, push this up there.
Yeah, I know you're pretty well refusing to accept money from any of us, even though a lot of us want to give it to you for all the effort you put into this. But you were suggesting possibly some charities or something.
Yeah, I'll have a list on the group when I release this that they can, if they feel the need to. I mean, obviously, right now with COVID-19 going on, it's that's kind of tricky for a lot of people. So that's when it comes out, enjoy it, and that's it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for the not quite as colorful commentary, so I could actually hear you talk. And then you weren't the only one, going back and playing some old games like Super Pitfall here. Paul Thayer actually went through and he did one video here. We actually went through and played a couple of basic games that he was, impressed with back in the day as a kid, because he's a bit younger than us. So, I mean, he was, young when these games actually came out. So Strata was one, I think, in Rainbow magazine that is basically a bust-out clone, but a pretty well done one for basic.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to do this stupid thing again, YouTube?
Yeah, I remember this. I think this was one of the last Rainbow and discs that I got.
Had some interesting gameplay mechanics too. I think when you broke through the top level, your paddle suddenly shrinks to half size or something like that, just to make it a bit more difficult. That is like a nice little track screen with the little outline, animated outline and stuff, and the gameplay is actually a decent clip for a basic game. So, and colorful. Let's see if we can get him when he's on the start of a level here. It's even got a tracked mode, which you didn't see too often in basic games. And then after that, he went into one that was a personal favorite of his called Wizards 2.
Yeah, I watched him playing this one. This is an interesting game.
Yeah, where you're doing all these spells, and you can have up to 4 players at once. They can be a mixture of human and computer players. And you're doing spells to like pause somebody from being able to do something else, and turning people into frogs and all kinds of weird stuff. It's a game I remember I saw it way back whenever it came out, and I didn't really get into it at the time. The author actually is the same guy that did Fire Draka for Color Quest, which is a semi-graphics 24 game that he actually did end up trying a little bit later because I suggested it. Might even be in this video, I'm not even sure. A bit of a wacky game that he did a few years earlier as a commercial release. Might not have been this video, might have been a different one. It must have been a different one. So anyway, he covered those, and then he actually went and decided to play Come Gotta Be Ninja, which is actually one of our guests today games, Glenn Dahlgren. And I ran the he ran the OS9 version just because it was easy for him to launch and get it running. And I guess he tried playing in the day, and he didn't realize that if you had a 2-button joystick, you can actually do, like, if you hit both buttons, you can actually grab somebody, flip them over. So whenever he got to the people of the staff, he would just die. So he thought the game just completely sucked. And well, he's gotten a lot better at it now. I think he's even said, like, he got up to level 4 or 5, I think, by the end of this video. And I think he mentioned offline he actually has gotten to the final boss now. So he's progressed quite a bit. But anyway, for those that had watched our interview with Glenn Dahlgren earlier today, this is one of the games that we mentioned. I think this is the last one we actually fully programmed.
No, I'm going to die. Shit.
I forgot he swears a lot in this too, so I better read that.
Oops.
But it's a pretty decent game, and you can tell the difference between this and Warrior King that Glenn had done earlier. And Warrior King was released, within a year or two of the CoCo 3 being released when everybody was just learning the hardware. and he was, still kind of learning the semi language. So this game runs actually smoother and faster and has better digitized sound effects than the previous one. And of course, people progressed more since, like Chet or Nick or some others too, where this actually seems kind of primitive and slow at this point compared to what is being done now as more has been learned about the CoCo 3 and some of the tricks you can do. But this one was actually kind of a fun one. And when they ported it to OS 9, they actually added auto detect. If you hit clear to go off the window to do something else, it automatically pauses the game for you. So if you were on a BBS waiting for a download, you hear the ding, your download's done. So you quickly hit clear and unzip whatever else, and then go back and pick up exactly where you left off, which I always thought was kind of a cool feature. And of course, if you're running on 6 or a 9 version of Nitrous 9, it actually runs in native mode. So it actually runs a little bit faster and cleaner than the RSDOS version did, without having to change any of the code. Let's fast forward a bit here. It was fun because Glenn was mentioning, we were talking about Paul, and actually this is what got the interview started, was Glenn commented on this video. And Paul was complaining, and you were mentioning too in the design of games, Chet, where it's just too easy to die all the time, and it's just, your margin of error is pretty well nil. And Glenn said after watching, he remembers, I was really being cruel. We're trying to kill the player, we're trying to embarrass him, type of thing. And that was actually more the mindset of games back in the 80s. And especially in Europe, I'm watching some of the Amigo shows. They talk about these ones where you have to jump literally to the perfect pixel to get past some certain point. If you're off by 1 pixel, you'll die. And then that's just the kind of mindset we had back then. You had to be real men to win these video games. And now it's like, this sluffy stuff where you get 5,000 infinite lives and you get hurt, you lose a couple of points type thing, but you can keep playing forever. You don't have to like earn your way back through it. You can just keep continuing, type thing. I don't know if we've gone too far the other way and it's a little bit too easy now. And then, some of the game players is a little bit too easy. I don't know what your view on that is, Chet, or not, or we're kind of balanced.
I think it provides a more challenging opportunity to the player, because there's a lot more thought that has to go into the game in order to create it. You look at all the streams that I've done in the past week. The vast majority of that was play testing, looking at what's going on in the game, making sure that the player isn't getting screwed over in a way that is just absolutely terrible, that's going to turn them off from the game. You're looking at how do I keep them engaged into the game, rather than running around some empty level where it starts to get boring. So you're looking at trying to make sure that you're entertaining the player rather than frustrating them. Certainly there's going to be aggravation involved as they build their skill set, but you don't want to turn them off either, and doing stuff like where you're just setting it up for the player to die over and over again, and that's your goal. I mean, your goal is to kill the player, to make a point to say, hey, I control this world. I made this world. I control you. That's going to show up. They're never going to buy your game again. It's retarded.
Yet back in the day, that was more the accepted norm than it is now. It's kind of funny how games have progressed. As you said, they tend to be difficult enough to lure the player into knowing that I can do better. I can get past this point, as opposed to being so incredibly frustrating that you just want to throw your joystick against the wall.
Well, I think in a lot of ways,
appear achievable.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways that worked really well for the earlier games. If you look at things like like 1942, everything on the screen is there. Its intent is to kill you. That you're going into battle. That's so that really kind of was where everything was kind of situated. So when you get into from, I think 1942 was in 82 or 81. You get into like 83, 84, where you're doing more puzzle games. You're seeing games like Mario or Super Mario Brothers, where it's a consistent tempo throughout that game. You're constantly moving forward. You're avoiding things, and none of those levels are there really to kill you. They're meant to slow you down and to make sure that you can get you've got the skill to move on. They're not there to just crush your soul.
Yeah. That was something Glenn mentioned when he was watching this, and he mentioned during the interview too that that was the purpose back then, and he's evolved from that too. And hearing basically the same thing from you, I was going to ask Nick, as another game developer, is that a kind of assessment you agree with too? That the things that game design has progressed, where it's not the goal to embarrass the player.
Well, I've never been as so hard on that rule. I've always liked to let the player progress, and most of my games actually do have an end. So I do I do expect the player to be able to get through it rather than just dying constantly. But yeah, back in the day, it was that was the norm. That well,
I guess it was
in
based in the arcade where you had to try to kill the guy off so that you actually made money on the machine, right?
Yeah, and that was based on the arcades. They couldn't have you playing forever. That was an important thing, that you had to have the people die quickly, so they put more money in the machine. So
yeah, I guess that's probably the main reason for the mindset change. I guess I just was thinking out loud on that. But yeah,
well,
that
now
makes sense.
That's right. Nowadays, most kids or people play the computer games on their home computer, so there isn't really the money. You don't put money into the machine to play it. You pay online now.
Yeah, I mean, I spent far less time in in the arcades, actually playing games than I did, playing them at home, either on the CoCo or my Atari or what have you. So that certainly gives you a couple of different mindsets of how people would certainly look at that in transition, because as somebody who doesn't come from that world of wanting to destroy the player, then that's one of the reasons why I like games like Lode Runner, where you go back and you look at a lot of it is really puzzle based. The AI and some of the game mechanics are about what you would expect for that particular era, but the game was actually really, really fun because of that puzzle nature of it.
And the feeling of accomplishment, I made it to the next level. I made it to the next level type thing, as opposed to I barely survived.
Yeah, it's like with Super Pitfall, where you're traversing that giant level. Once you've lost all your lives, you're done.
Yeah, and you have to start over.
Right. So, and that gets
like even the arcades went beyond that, because they started putting in, put in a quarter to continue where you left off, rather than have to redo the whole thing. It was an incentive for you to put the money in, but they didn't make you start over and get you so frustrated you're saying, I just don't want to play this anymore.
Yeah.
Gotta get going, guys. Have a good night.
Yeah, you too.
All right,
Brian.
see ya.
Bye.
Anyway, a lot of good live gameplay videos this week from a couple of game creators, actually. I mean, Paul's written some games too, and Chet obviously, and Nick just released his game that a lot of people have been playing, Rally X. He's working on his next one already. So it's a pretty good CoCo renaissance of game development here. I know Paul's working on a couple different game projects right now too. So
I've noticed we've also had kind of a steady drop off on YouTube.
yeah, it's getting late, I think, for some people, especially on the East Coast.
Double
Not too many
midnight.
stories left though. I'll breeze through some of these. Most of these were these were actually discussion topics we just had on the game design, kind of related to the Glenn interview. The rest of these are getting back into just more normal stuff. So next one up here, Trey Tomes. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. But he took a Python Sudoku generator, Sudoku, whatever it's pronounced, and he rewrote it in BASIC that actually works. And he put the source code up in GitHub for anybody who wants to actually see that in action. And I've got a screenshot of a solved version here. So it's just a 32 column text thing, but if you're into playing that puzzle game, once again, as Chet has said. Next up is Erico. Of course, he's been working on his semi-graphics kind of Double Dragon style game here. He's got some further animations, and he's got life bars working. I think we mentioned that the last time, a couple weeks ago. He's got the kicks and ducks and punches and stuff in there too that he demonstrated on here. And then he put a later one here where he's actually got some of the different AI moves, and also a butterfly knife the guy whips around here, the little white thing. I mean, what he's accomplishing here, considering how crappy of a resolution this is just amazing. And it's funny. I mean, this kind of stuff would easily have been within the realm of programmers back in the day. Just nobody actually sat down to try to force a fairly decent animation on these low res games. But I know Eric Gavreluk, who's quite notorious for being cantankerous about a lot of people's development skills, has actually said, I don't know what I'm going to need you for, but I want to hire you for something to do graphics like this. just because it's such a bold vision for what you could do with a very limited pixel size on the screen, as well as a limited palette. Like he's got this nice, gradiated, sunset in the background with buildings and stuff, and he's got animated characters using 64 by 32 graphics with some limitations of how you can even organize those graphics. So it's pretty impressive. I'm definitely looking forward to this project too, in a way, because it's sophisticated for what it's working with.
the motion is believable. I mean, even though it's so low res, I mean, the motions look right. You
Yeah,
can
the
tell
animation
what they are.
the animation is fantastic.
Yeah. And it actually looks like it'll be a fun game. So I'm looking forward to that. It's almost as much as Digger 3. And this one we showed off last week. Henry Reitfeld had played Temple of Rom, because that was our game challenge last week by Rick Adams, on his MAME cabinet. And here's an alternative one done by Joey Cabral showing Temple of Rom in here. And he's got his cabinet set up to handle a variety of arcade games or other computer games, which is why there's so many buttons on the console for each player. I think there's like 8 for each. And but Rick's been really impressed here because he's never seen his games in arcade cabinets before, and he's been just loving seeing all these different varieties of it, using real arcade controls and joysticks and real arcade buttons.
There is no suspension of disbelief. It really is on an arcade cabinet.
Yeah. This here, actually, Paul already covered on the tail end of the show, so I don't really need to show this except to mention this is his poker squares game, which I'll just maybe show a brief screenshot here. I'll probably have to first reload this too. But very well drawn cards for the 320 mode. He's using Nick's extension to do the by 225 graphics mode. Now, actually, we had a question for you, Nick. You dropped off before this happened. Your patches, does that affect the text mode too? Can you do 80 by 28 text?
80 by 28, yes, you can.
Okay, because he was mentioning that he liked programming on the actual CoCo 3 itself for doing this. So he's running an 80 column mode because he can see more of his code. And I mentioned you should be able to do that by 28 instead of just by 24.
Yeah, it does the text and the graphics.
Okay. So hopefully he's noticed that actually will help him on doing the coding. Yeah. But very well done graphics. And he's got a little ML routine to speed up the get put buffers for the actual putting the cards. But the cards are very well done. The layout of the game is very well done. The text actually for a 320 game is actually quite readable for that small of a font. Another new game I'm looking forward to. He said he should have this done within a few weeks too. So, and this was a new YouTuber to me anyway. It was called what is her name here? Mighty Heidi Dream Warrior.
Awesome.
So it's an actual female playing Downland, and it's kind of like a speed run almost. She does commentary throughout the game. Unfortunately, the video is very low quality. It's 240p, so it's not the greatest looking video in the world. But she actually plays it right through and goes through all 10 of the screens. So she actually makes it right to the end, and talks about playing it as a kid, and then her experience doing it now, and some of the frustration she has at certain spots in the game, and trying to get through it, etc. So you're gonna do this again, are you?
Hey everybody, so I'm going to be doing a walkthrough of the 1980s, I believe, Tandy Color Computer 3 Downland. It was a game I played growing up as a kid. Really tough game. It looks easy, but it's actually hard if you've ever played it. So we have an explorer who's found himself in caves that he's now looking to find.
It's a 12.5-minute video, so I'll let you guys go watch that. But it's kind of interesting hearing her commentary. We don't get too many female perspectives on some of the old CoCo arcade games, so it's kind of interesting to get somebody that actually played it as a kid and is now playing it again, going through the whole thing. And it's actually one of the better games too. And here Marlon Lee came back for one more. He's been doing a lot of Moon Patrol clones or Moon Patrol derivative games, and so he's got another entry in that one called Sand Rover, which is by Roger.
Hey guys, today we have Sand Rover. From Roger.
Can you guys hear that, or is it too quiet?
Yeah. What was that Donkey Kong that was there before?
That was Monkey Kong by Ken Kalish. This was part of his intro reel.
Yeah.
CoCo SDC.
So this one isn't strictly a Moon Patrol. It's a little bit different in the game mechanics, a little the jumping and shooting objects and stuff, and the little earth up in the corner.
Give it a try.
But it adds a few other things too.
Obviously,
he's got some shapes that actually come up and rear up as you drive towards them. Fast forward a little bit here.
Left instead of left life. After you get through the first base, then you will get some sand creatures, which is an interesting addition.
Like that one there. Yeah.
This certainly wouldn't have been my favorite version.
I mean, it's similar to the ones in the expert course where you get those things, sort of flowery things coming out of the pits and stuff.
But my least favorite.
Not a bad little game. It's not quite as good as Lunar Over Patrol or something, but this was one of the ones that was either on a TD&D magazine or something, so it was basically really, really cheap. And that's all I have for the GameON news this week.
Cool.
And we already got kind of an update from Chet on where he's at. Nick, did you have any update on the new game or even anything you want to announce about the new game?
Not just yet. No. Yeah. I'll announce it a bit closer to the end.
Okay, and then Paul, of course, gave us an update on his poker game. So it's 3 active games going on development that we got updates on somewhat today. And I know like Paul's doing a couple of games he's got in the wings too. So a lot of game development going on in the CoCo community. It's a good thing to hear. Oh, well, also Erico's, semi-graphics fighting game too. So 5. Pretty soon we'll have to have a top 10 list like Rainbow used to.
All right. Well, anything else we need to cover?
That's all I had for news. We're totally caught up, so I won't have to borrow Mikey to sleep again next week here with 80 stories in a row. So
good, we can get back to floppy talk.
That was funny because actually, I know Nick, you said you got kind of bored with that pretty early on, but actually, like even Stevie, he said he had fun doing that. I mean, normally he's the one if you're getting that kind of technical weeds discussion, he's like out of there, or killing the whole stream by accident. But he actually enjoyed it, and I think we hadn't done one of those technical deep dives in quite a while, so it was kind of fun to actually do one again. And everybody seemed to be pretty involved with it during the session, except Nick. So
and Mikey.
I don't think we'll do that too often, but it was fun to do it once in a while. Go ahead, Mark.
I didn't say.
And Mikey, me. I said and Mikey bored Mikey.
Well, Mikey just doesn't like news in general, so
yeah.
I mean, he was busy sorting drive wire cables and stuff here, or cables when we were having the interview. So, So any final thoughts either on the interview from earlier today, or the first part of the show, or any of the stuff that we've discussed on the
it was
part 2 here?
Great having Glenn on here. He was fantastic and really amiable and very knowledgeable.
Yeah, and like I said, it was fun to have a couple of the rumored things. I mean, some of us didn't know some of the details behind the scenes on some things, but getting the kind of the behind the scenes part on both Contras and on Sinistar, and then some details on the assembly of the Roland Knight had written that they were using for the development there that both DICOM and Sundog ended up using. And then also getting Doug Maston, who kind of showed up in the chat there to talk about a little bit about his experience with Contras. And why he did stop the project and had to go to Jeff afterwards to get finished. And then, having Glenn explain how he had to, kind of organize the transition between the two and try to get the game completed because they've been advertising it already. I think it ended up being like 2 years late when it finally got released. And there's still some bugs in it. I mean, Jeff admitted himself he didn't have any other play testers. So the 2-player mode does have some bugs where occasionally it gets stuck in an FRQ loop. The music's playing fine, but the whole game's froze dead. And that seems to only happen in the 2-player mode. If you're playing single player, I've never seen that bug happen. So
who started that game? Is it that Doug guy?
Yeah, Doug. Yeah, and he was actually in the chat during the tail end of the show. Yeah. So
it was his game originally, and he went to Sundog.
Yeah, basically, from my understanding, from what we had in the interview, is that Doug started the game and he had most of the graphics and most of the music and sound routines, which actually are quite good. He did, but he couldn't get the final logic and the final gameplay itself working properly. And this was his very first CoCo project he'd ever tried to do. That was a lot to bite off. A 512K, almost mod file sounding digitized soundtrack in the background, hardware scrolling at the same time, for a beginner to kind of tackle his first project. And he said in the chat, he basically just burned himself out and he just couldn't handle it anymore. So then he dropped it. And by that time they'd already advertised it because the game was close enough that Glenn was quite impressed with it and wanted to start pre-advertising it, coming soon type thing. And unfortunately, it became coming soon for 2 years until he convinced Jeff, can you pick this up and see if you can at least get it, out the door so we can get it out. And, Jeff eventually did do it kind of grudgingly. And I think anybody who's ever had to take over a project from somebody else completely from scratch, I mean, we've experienced that where it's you have different ways of thinking. I would do a programming thing this way, but this guy did it some totally different way. So am I going to just try to pick up his code and continue on? Or am I just going to say, screw it and rewrite half of it because I want it the way I'm used to? I mean, Chet, you probably experienced that too. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, quite a bit. I mean, I've had to deal with quite a bit of code from other people over the years, and yeah, I've had experiences with good code and bad code. Thankfully, a lot more good code than bad. But every once in a while, you do get just that one piece of code that just is you don't want to ever see it again, ever.
Yeah, I can actually cite examples in Nitrous 9 from that. And Nick takes the easy way out. He just never accepts code from anybody else. He always writes everything from scratch. So.
I can't do it.
He's the master of reinventing the wheel. That's what I would say. So.
And that's with high level languages. I mean, you get down to something like assembly. I mean, you get bad assembly code, and yeah, it's just you might as well just rewrite it. I mean, screw it. Just toss it aside. Take whatever logic you can glean out of it, whatever good little bits and pieces you can pull out of that, and just rewrite it from scratch. I mean, that's usually the best option with this.
Like some of these assembly language programs I've talked to that have had to take over projects, they'll keep the assets, like any sound that was done or graphics or tiles or whatever that are good or maps. They'll keep all that stuff, but they'll basically just rewrite the engine, mainly because they want to be able to understand fully with the code. And sometimes you see some weird programming technique you can't grok it. You look at it and go, what the hell are you doing here? It seems to be working, but I don't know why.
And I guess in this case, I mean, like with Digger, I mean, I did that in 96, 97. And so I haven't touched it in almost 20 years. And I just recently went back to working on it. So that it's a large code base. It's almost 500K worth of assembly code. So it's quite large to actually have to consume at any level. So it was commented fairly well for at the time. But yeah, there was just some really terrible. I mean, the guard AI is just absolutely terrible. I hate working in that code, but I can't rewrite it, replace it without having to test the entire damn game. So I mean, I'll be pulling stuff away like the map loaders and some of this and some of the minor stuff. But beyond that, yeah, it's once you got terrible code, just get rid of it.
Yeah, go ahead, Nick. You had something to say on that too, I guess.
Well, I have looked at some of my old projects from back in the 80s, and I don't heavily comment my code at all. But the thing is that because it's my code, I know how I program, I know how I think or not. And so I can actually get back into I can understand my old code, but I'm hopeless at trying to debug anyone else's code.
Yeah, and I'm kind of in the middle. I mean, Nitrous 9 was a disassembly project, basically. We had to disassemble the entirety of OS 9 and try to figure out how it worked. And we had some guidance from Kevin Darling Books, who they'd already done this whole disassembly project years before we did, but we didn't have access to any of that. And then I kind of getting along with Chet had said, after I got out of Nitrous 9 after the end of 2001, and then I got back into it finally around 2016, 17, it was like, I was looking at my own code I wrote 15, 20 years ago, and I commented it fairly well, but I also noticed that back then, obviously I didn't really understand some of the stuff here because some of the comments are completely wrong. So I'd go down a rabbit hole trying to figure out this isn't what this does. What the hell was I thinking? Type of thing. And then also because Nitrous 9 became an open source project in the meantime, some people have rewritten other parts of the code. So I've had to figure out some of my own code that I had bad comments on that nobody touched. And I also had to figure out code that had been replaced by somebody else's code who codes differently than I would have. So I had to figure out what they were trying to do as well. And then, we found a few bugs and stuff that we've had to fix over time. And I found a few bugs that I had left in that had been there for 20 years type thing. So it's been an interesting experience. But yeah, I definitely was thankful that I had put in a lot of comments, because 80% of the comments that Bill and I put in were right. I'd say probably more than that, probably about 95% of the comments are right. There's some routines we just didn't understand. So we took best guesses. Or sometimes we'd start figuring a routine thinking it was doing this, and you'd get through it, and it's a large routine. And you get later on, oh no, actually it's doing this. And at that point in the code, you'd start commenting it correctly. But I was too lazy to go back and change the previous 4,000 lines of code to fix all the, the assumptions that I had wrong. So I just leave that and figure, well, I know what it does now type thing. But coming 20 years later down the pike, it's like, no, I'm looking through the beginning of the code again. You have wrong comments. I don't understand what the hell this is doing. Then you read later on, by the way, everything else above is wrong. It should be actually doing this. Type of thing. So it's been an interesting journey.
And we should talk about our Curtis knows all this. If you really get stuck in a programming problem and you just can't work it out, and you spend hours banging your head trying to work out what the bug is or how to do a certain thing, and I think Curtis is similar. The best thing, shut down, go to sleep, and in the morning when you wake up, you get a moment and you say, that's the solution. So I don't know what it is, but in your sleep, you are thinking about it and you work it out in your sleep, and you wake up in the morning, you sit down, you think, okay, where was I? Oh yeah, why don't I just do that? Bang, fixed. And that has happened so many times. So that's what I do now. If I'm stuck, shut down, go to sleep in the morning, and I wake up early. In the morning, in 5-10 minutes, I've got the answer.
Yep, that works for me too. And every once in a while, it's even quicker than that. I'll just go, I can't figure this out, or I can't figure this bug. And I'll go to, watch the news or read the newspaper or read a book or whatever.
Yep.
And literally I'll read like 10 pages, all of a sudden, bang, the light goes on.
Yeah.
Drop the book, run back to the room, try it out. Yeah, that worked. And I was totally flabbergasted for 3 hours before that. And then 10 minutes of just shifting my brain to do something else completely not related to programming. All of a sudden my brain in the background goes, oh, by the way, you should be doing it this way.
You dumbwit.
Yeah. Do you get that too, Chet, or are you just so genius you just get it right the first time?
Yeah, I don't worry about it too much, because I know that at the end of the day I'm gonna end up solving the problem. I mean, I guess that's what it boils down to. I mean, that's my entire career. I mean, it's like the first major bug with that I had to deal with Digger had been there since the very beginning. So I'm searching through, almost at the time a little over 400K worth of code, trying to find, that one bug that had been, added almost 20 years ago, trying to figure out exactly what was doing it. So, people ask me, well, have you fixed the problem? And I'm like, I'll get to it eventually. It's no big deal, because it's not. I mean, you're going to solve it. I mean, if you've been doing this long enough, you know that you're going to dig into it. You're going to eventually figure out what the problem is, because you created the problem to begin with.
But do you have that where if you separate from the code without even trying to go through it, and you just go do something else or go have a sleep or whatever else, that all of a sudden that inspiration just pops in for no reason at all? You're not even thinking about it?
That's why I stay stoned most of the time, man. I mean,
it happens much quicker for you than us, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't have to worry about it. I mean, I'll turn over, I'll turn around here and pet the dog a little bit. I'll turn back and it's like, what was I doing? And then I sit there and I think about it. I was like, oh yeah, I was gonna fix it. Oh wait a minute, I think it's that problem. I go and dig it and I find it. I mean, getting high has got me farther. I mean, there is not a piece of code that I have not written since I started working on Digger 3 again that I haven't written stoned.
See, I did do that in my youth. At least I tried to, but my short-term memory loss was bad enough that I would just totally lose my train of thought, and I'd have to re-comment the code or re-figure out the code. And then, okay, I'm on it. And you get that tunnel vision focus too, where you can actually go in and you start doing really well. And all of a sudden something distracts you, and all of a sudden my brain just totally lost what I was doing. So the short-term memory loss always went against me. It didn't help me at all.
I love that. I love purging stuff. I mean, I go, go-kart racing is a major stress reliever to get everything out, and it's you have to separate yourself from the code, because if you get really too involved, you get hyper focused on it, and you're only going to see the things from your perspective. You're not going to start seeing things, oh well, this works differently. So when I'm working on Digger, if I go start playing another game like say Super Pitfall, it's got a much different control mechanism. It's got a different feel to it throughout the entire game. So I'm sitting there playing it, and that right there is pulling me away from it, from what I've been doing. It's showing me some contrast between that, so I actually have something to compare against. And so I started thinking, it's like, oh wait, I'm may not be even on the right track here. So yeah, you really do have to separate from it, because you get too involved in it, it's like a bad marriage. You will just never get through it.
Yeah, like one thing I've noticed, if I get too involved in the code and like hyper focused as you described it, is that you'll be sitting there looking at code that has an obvious bug, but you know what the code should be doing in your own head. So you're just making assumptions. Your eyes and your brain are skipping over lines that are blaring out at you like this is wrong, but you're thinking what you should have done, and that's all that's registering in your brain. So you're just skimming this code and going, yeah, that should work, that should work, that should work, even though looking after you've separated for a bit and kind of got your brain on a different gear and come back, you can do like 5 seconds. Well, there's the bug. It's been staring at me the whole time.
Yeah, and I do it in a lot of different ways. I mean, it's not just that. I'll switch over to just working in a different language. I'll switch over and start working on something for the map converter that I may need, a week or two. Now, of course, I'm done with all that stuff, but I'll set that down and I'll start working on it. It separates me from that assembly language. It gets me into, more high level. I'm thinking a lot differently. I'm clearing all that. I'm not thinking at such a low level. I'm not looking 5 instructions ahead, 10 back, trying to figure out, okay, what was the CC register at this particular point? What was where's all this stuff coming from? I'm looking at a much different level. So you start relaxing that brain. You just start, just kind of turn it into sludge the way that you should.
Yeah. I would say from the sounds of it, all three of us have that same experience, then where you have to disconnect from the immediate problem and kind of change gears in your brain, whether it's by an app or substance abuse or whatever,
I have never abused this substance, period. I would never do that. Actually I might have. If it smelled good, I probably would.
It was performance enhancement drugs.
Yeah, that's right. It's medical.
Makes you genius, man. Makes you genius.
Yeah. So as Steve would say, have we beat this thing to death?
I think we have. It was actually fun though. It was fun getting all the stuff caught up. It was fun seeing, Chet actually doing active level development, because that was kind of cool to see him thinking out loud and placing stuff around and snickering when he figured, this is going to screw the player up. He's going to have to figure this one out, everything. And then he tries and goes, oh wait, it's too hard. I can't even do it. So.
So yeah, we're at 2 hours and 35. So.
Wow.
That's 6.5 hours of content today, guys. I think we deserve a raise. We'll have to talk to Stevie about that.
Yep, we will.
Yeah,
all right.
Shall we get over this quarantine, man? It's just can't sit online for 6 hours again.
All right.
Yeah, my butt's numb now. So.
Shall we do the outro?
Yep, I think we should.
Because it's not just my butt.
This concludes another episode of CoCo Talk, the world's leading live talk show featuring the Tandy color computer. For all things CoCo Talk, visit us on the web at CoCoTALK.live. We'd love to hear from you. Send feedback, suggestions, even segments via email to CoCoTALK at CoCoTALK.live.
CoCo Talk is rocking the 8-bit world, keeping the Tandy flame alive. We may be mocked, but we'll never stop, 'cause CoCo Talk is rocking the 8-bit world.
Consider supporting the show with a purchase of merchandise from our retro swag shop at 8bit256.com. If you'd like to become a patron of the show, click the Patreon link at our website at CoCoTALK.live.
CoCo Talk is rocking the 8-bit world, keeping the Tandy flame alive. We may be mocked, but we'll never stop, 'cause CoCo Talk is rocking the 8-bit world.
CoCo Talk would not exist without the community, its cast, crew, and contributors. Thanks go to Curtis Boyle, David Ladd, Mark Overholzer, Grant Leedy, Bruce Moore, Nick Marentes, Ron Delvaux, Rick Adams, Jason Reichert, Richard Lorbieski, Jim Brain, Tom C., Rob Inman, Mark Bosley, Brian Joyce, Ken Reichert, David O'Connor, Brian Weasler, Terry Steggy, Nick Marotta, John Strong, and many more, especially to Steve Bjork for production suggestions and James Differendaffer for making my head explode. Please help support the CoCo community by visiting some of its various contributors. A list of resources is available at imacoconut.com. That's IMACOCONUT.com. The CoCo Talk theme song is copyright 2008 by D. Bruce Moore and Greg Sheeler. Mixed, mastered, and produced by D. Bruce Moore.
Here we go. And we're back.
Okay, well, thanks everybody for putting up for 2.5 hours of more show here to get all the news caught up. Otherwise, we'd have an 8-hour show next week, just for the news. So I think there was a lot of interesting content. There's a couple of things. There's some people that we've contacted from some of the stories there, like the person that has the SCART CoCo. We're going to try to get him on in a couple of weeks. I'll keep you guys posted. As far as it's standing right now, it looks pretty good that we'll be able to get them on so we can actually show off the SCART CoCo and answer any questions any of us have on that, because it's pretty unique to the France market from my understanding. And we've gotten great, game updates and even game developer, mantras here from Chet and Nick, which has been pretty cool. A lot of game updates.
You said great. What am I doing in there?
You qualify. The guy with 3 Ferraris.
A great ego, maybe. Is that what we're talking about? I'm not sure.
Okay, say goodbye, everybody.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye,
We'll see you
everybody.
guys all next week.